Brutally Speaking podcast is proudly sponsored by Rockabilia.com. For over 30 years, Rockabilia has been the go-to destination for all things band merch. With over 500,000 items in their online store and collaborations with today's hottest bands, you're sure to find something you love. Use our code BREW10 at checkout and take 10% off your total order. So go pick up your favorite new piece of merch now over at Rockabilia.com. Now, on to the show.
Say you have to have a lot of passion for what you're doing. This rings true because it's so hard that if you don't, any rational person would give up. It's really hard, and you have to do it over a sustained period of time. So if you don't love it, and if you're not having fun doing it, you're gonna give up.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another special edition of the Brutally Speaking podcast. I am your host, John, and this episode's guest is the returning Ken Susi, formerly of As Lay Dying, formerly of Unearth, currently, I believe, still of Swivel, still of USAUSA, and I guess sort of Burn Your Wishes as well, somewhere in there. This is an interesting chat. Obviously, to kind of preface, this was done... Oh man, a few weeks ago at this point, as of when I'm sitting down, literally, it is almost 7:30 on April 7th. We did this a few weeks ago to be a part of my 500th episode week, and Ken was basically one of the last people I needed to do to complete my full 500th episode week. The gist of it has always been that I just wanted to have my favorite people on that I've had on the show over the 500 episodes to just come on and have a conversation. And interestingly, I suppose, in almost every one of them that I've done, there comes a point where the guest and I just kind of have a real moment about something that's happening in their lives, happened in their lives, happening in their career. And just like a lot of the best episodes, a lot of what makes me love this medium, makes me love doing my own show, that I feel for some reason there is a connection that myself and the guests have where they feel comfortable to be so vulnerable and kind of say the things maybe that are hard to say to other people. And I think this is especially true with this conversation with Ken. The first hour of the 2-hour plus conversation you're about to hear is him finally being able to tell his side of what happened with the As Lay Dying stuff. And that's that when we had originally booked this over half a year ago, he was still in the band. Everything was great. And I had just asked him to be part of this monumental milestone moment for me. And of course he said yes. And in that time, everything that you all have come to know has happened. I know from reading a lot of comments myself, a lot of people are like, where's Ken? Where's everyone else in the band? Other than their statements, Tim's going on these podcasts. Why aren't the other guys saying anything? Well, you're going to hear it. And I feel like when you finally listen to not only the first hour of just everything Ken went through and the rest of the guys and everything you've been wondering, what caused everything and what's going on, you're going to hear it. But I hope you stick around for the rest of it to kind of hear other things that are happening in Ken's life that I think is why it was a cathartic moment for him to be able to finally tell his side of things and to tell his story. I wanted to hold on to this until it was time to drop all of the 500th episodes. But in light of today's current events on a lot of music sites with the online petition to have Tim essentially go through some sort of animal abuse counseling or something to that effect, what I don't want, and I know it's going to be the opposite when you literally hear this, but what I don't want is to feel like these events had already happened and then we did this conversation. We did this weeks before this even happened. So it just kind of feels like one of those, I might as well just put this out and then, it'll just do whatever it does. So without further ado, this is my conversation with Ken, and I'll talk to you on the other side of it. Well, thanks for joining me on a Saturday while I'm basically a bachelor, while my wife's at a bachelorette party.
Party.
Absolutely.
She go to Montreal or something like that, and she's at like, you know, all the strip clubs up there.
No, that'll be our trip when we go to Atlanta. I think we're gonna go check out a new place called Candyland. The food looks really great, actually. So I think I'm more stoked on the food than maybe seeing some BBLs and so forth.
Well, if you're gonna go to Atlanta, you should go to Vortex.
I've been there.
Yeah, it's so good. Like the burgers there are amazing.
Yeah, I think I just saw actually Brent's doing a triple header. Formerly a Mastodon is playing with all three of his bands somewhere over in that area, I think. So I was thinking about maybe trying to see if the wife would want to go see that. Probably not, though.
Good luck to him, man. From 2020 to now, there's been so many high profile roster moves in the music industry. It's been amazing to watch.
I mean, should we just get into it then?
Wait, are you insinuating that I left a band recently?
I mean, you know, it was news that made the rounds. So, you know, I figured the best way, honestly, to get into this is kind of what I did with Andrew from Dance Gavin Dance when he took over for Tillian. Because everyone's gonna just be like, I can already see like the tags on like any of these things. This part is at this, and they'll just timestamp the part that they want everyone to hear. So I guess let's just give the people what they want. Ken Susi is a man of the people, if nothing else.
I mean, yeah, I'm running against Trump in 2028, right? Is that the next election? So I got to get ready.
Sure, if we even get to have elections.
yeah. Well, at that point, I'm going to get the robot vote. The AI vote is important for me in that election. So
that's because you're friends with Paulie's robot from Rocky IV.
Listen, I've been cool with all the robots over time, like Mr. Game Show, like in the 80s, the kids who played that, or all those speaking spells and stuff. I've got them. I've been planting the seed from 1985 all the way to now. So I think AI. I'm going to win the AI vote for sure. We'll defeat Trump.
Weren't you indirectly a part of Mr. Robotron as well, unofficially?
I wish.
One of the few bands from out that way you were not a part of.
Exactly. Oh man. But no, yeah, like I mean I guess, why hold back? It's funny that, you wanted to interview me, and trust me, this really wasn't intended to be an As I Lay Dying, Ken Susi, or talking about that band kind of thing. I think when you and I initially spoke about doing a podcast, it was just we were celebrating your long history of doing podcasts, and you've always been a friend. And, I highly support this podcast, and I love what you do, and you're a good friend. And, but it also dawned on me that the other night I went to the Paleface Swiss show, and there was a lot of friends from tour, and there's a lot of, rumors flying around. So, I just feel like it was time to maybe, I don't know, maybe we do talk about a little bit about it. I know there's other things that you want to talk to me about, but I can kind of just dive right into like my feelings, like basically like what I can say about the As I Lay Dying experience or experiment, if you will, is that, I really didn't sign an NDA to be a part of As I Lay Dying, so there was nothing contractually keeping me from saying or doing anything. And believe it or not, when I first joined up with them, I specifically said, I'm Ken Susi, like I come with the Ken Susi brand. And like, that was years and years of being a great, solid guitar player, a part of a duo in the metalcore industry, as well as being known as like a guy who likes to have fun. So if I can't handle this band for some reason, it's kind of on you guys, like I'm pretty, I come from Massachusetts, Buzz and I, and like anyone who knows me, I'm pretty, like I know I'm a polarizing person, but I don't necessarily don't get along with people, like I like to like see people smile. I always like to crack jokes. So, I'm not really like, I don't bounce from bands to bands. I'm not a guitar will travel kind of person. Right.
Right.
But basically what I can do is I can speak to the experience of what I witnessed during my time in As I Lay Dying from like 2021 to 2024. And I can even speak a little bit to like what I witnessed before I was even in the band, or just touring with them over the years. I mean, I met Tim, I would say probably back in 2002 or something, or 2001, when I was still in a van, and Unearth was like, we just put out, our eulogy record, Things of Conscious. So I known him from back then. But I think a lot of the information that I'm going to talk about is probably already public. But I think at this time, people need to know that, like, I don't think it's fair. And Tim being like a litigious person, and silencing everybody around the band in the particular situation that we're all in. It's obviously clear, like, the people that are close to him and who are not speaking. And I think fans think it's kind of weird why people are not talking. But in my opinion, I think it's unacceptable for Tim to go on like podcasts with his friends and make false claims about like how the band broke up. And, I guess like, believe what you want, but my version of what happened totally doesn't align with, basically what he's been out there saying and putting out statements about. Right. So I really don't personally want to get into a back and forth with Tim Lambesis, but, and I'm not really going to I really don't want to respond per se to what he said in the breakup and all that stuff. Like it's just not what I'm here to do. But, I think the band just found ourselves in a position where we were essentially endorsing and promoting somebody with like a history to like, past accusations and he went to prison and all that stuff, and he did what he did. But like after his incarceration, it was almost like, I did kind of see this coming. Like he, in my opinion, he like formulated this like almost like, reality TV, persona for his fan base of like him portraying himself of this like man of redemption or rehabilitation. And like, it really gave those people that really do believe in that, this like sense of like, I can get behind this guy and do the thing that, that he says that he is. And I can overachieve, I can overcome the things that I've endured in my life and, and like giving people hope. But like, to be totally honest with you, it's, as I said, it's like well-crafted and well thought out. I really don't believe, in my opinion, I really don't believe it's a real thing, in his world, but maybe he can speak to that. But, going back to the band, a lot of troubling issues like kind of surfaced within the band in his personal life, like, surface in his personal life, but also with the band, leading the band like into it. And we were like, just basically, supporting somebody dealing with serious problems. And we were unaware of how serious those problems were at the time. And when we figured, when the band actually, it revealed himself and the band figured it out, that's when, we really realized that, I believe, and we believe that Tim was, in need of professional help. And it was something that we were not able to provide or equipped to provide to him. And because we're not like therapists and we're not relationship experts, we're none of that, right? We're just band dudes like looking to play gigs and have a good time. And we were really kind of, a lot of us felt a lot of like regret when we figured out exactly what was going on, and when the band evaporated. Basically what I'm trying to say is it had to stop.
Right. So a couple of things, and you were right, kind of saying what you said from the jump of like this really wasn't the crux of what this was supposed to be. But I think it's kind of hard not to kind of address the elephant in the room out the gate, to then eventually move on and get to the better stuff of what I want to talk about with you. But I do have a few questions about that. So sure. Something to me, because we've done the podcast kind of throughout, the beginning of your end in Unearth, and then kind of the even the beginning of the As Lay Dying, the original version of the band coming back and touring, and you guys are one of the first bands to go tour with them, and kind of getting the backlash of that. We kind of discussed that, and your thoughts on that and everything. So it's interesting that we're here, because I feel like just wanting to know more about the growth of people and how we traverse hardships and so forth. Something I would maybe ask you now, kind of being on the other side of this, is, obviously any new relationship, it's good when it's new, and you're kind of in that honeymoon phase. Were there signs maybe even during then that you can see now that were happening that maybe you just kind of, all of you had blinders to because it was new and it was exciting, and it's you're playing bigger gigs than maybe you personally had played in maybe quite a while? Was there kind of a little bit of that going on, you think, that to where you didn't notice the cracks kind of in the foundation initially happening?
You know what? A lot of musicians, that have been duped, or people that are in situations like this, may say like, oh yeah, it's like a Hallmark movie. I never knew that this gentleman wasn't Prince Charming, and then and then oh my God, he killed my cat, and then he murdered my family, just picking out a fictitious like Hallmark movie. But I knew exactly what I was getting into when I got into it. And the funny thing is that I do really love the internet, because everyone has the freedom of speech, and everyone can say whatever they want. And the keyboard warriors out there, like, I appreciate the negative and the positive, but people on the internet are right. Ken Susi, aligned himself with this guy, and like, who would, he obviously had a past record, and what did you expect? That's the easy, simple way of people like justifying what happened and trying to like portray me or corner me into a certain type of persona. But what I will say is, for those that don't know, is that you're not here. You're not me. I spent 25 years touring. I met this guy in the early thousands, before the from the 1900s, right, into the 2000s. I met this guy. So that says how long ago I've known this guy. I've done multiple tours with him, and in those times, I always thought Tim was a good person. And there's a lot of people that say that, in that time. And I was willing to stand behind somebody at that point, because there's layers of friendship and years of friendship and conversations that you have backstage, and meeting families and doing things, and, the experiences you have with these people that are kind of like, what, like, this guy messed up. And I'm here to say, yeah, those people that are saying that stuff online are 1000% right, but you just don't know the full story. And I'm saying that they're technically right. I should have known better. But then again, I am the type of person that I would rather give somebody a second chance. The second chance is the one, right? And if you fail me from there, I would rather have given somebody a second chance than to not give them a chance at all, because that's not how I'm made, I would rather just kind of say, like, I believe this person could be rehabilitated. I liked this person before, they were incarcerated. I have a lot of friends that went to jail and got out and are stellar people. So if I miss an opportunity, or if I don't support somebody in that time, then I'm a jerk. And I really did want to kind of, I like Phil. And at the time I was supposed to be in the band with Jordan and Josh. It wasn't supposed to be a Nick Pierce and Ryan Neff situation. So I already knew all of those guys for a ton of years. And I was like, you know what? Like, Nick's leaving the band. At the time, he was the first person I called, Nick Hippa. I was like, are you okay with me doing this? That shows the level of respect that I have for him and his family. And he basically told me what I needed to know, and I wasn't dumb to it. And I knew what I was getting into. And that's why I was never like really an official member. So I was moonlighting in that band, and there was never an official statement that like the guys that were in the band, the new iteration, as Jordan Mancino calls the scab lineup, we all, like, maybe the other guys were fooled, but I wasn't, because I have a long history of friendship with their past management. I know, the guys in the band, so I heard all the stories, and I knew everything that I needed to know going into it. So, yep, the internet, technically right. The only thing I wish I could have done differently was I probably shouldn't have went on the Josta podcast. I said it before, and vouch for him, because I really did see some, like, a few positive things. Like, Tim on a day-to-day basis, like when he's left to his own devices, is like you would think a functional normal member of any band, and I didn't really see too much of the relationship stuff up front. But also I'm very like, I don't know how to explain it, but I'm very East Coast. I have thick skin and I don't really pay attention to noise as much as other people do. But when things become apparent, that's when you're like, all right, well, I just saw the signs and I'm witnessing this. I was basically a paid employee, I wasn't a part of the band. So I was just kind of like, oh, red flag. I don't want to be a part of this. This is stupid. I'm not aligning my brand and myself with this.
Well, I think the hard thing, and you and I have actually, we talked about this on the episode I did with Tim and you. And I think it kind of bears repeating a little bit. And I'm not going to go into more of the semantics of why, because like you and I think we kind of touched on it even more in the episode, but it's like, we want to believe in the best in people, and we want to give people, like you said, the second chance. And to go through something like prison time and stuff like that, I had a friend who went through a couple of years, and basically right before COVID. Thank God she got out at that point before that. But it's a thing where if you don't believe that you can rehab and that you can learn from your past mistakes and grow and become better, then I think that says more about the other people than it does necessarily about the person that is being judged. And unfortunately, sometimes we're proven that that's like going through those things doesn't actually change anyone. And maybe it just makes them find ways to hide the shittiness a lot better, unfortunately.
100%. Yeah.
But I think the one thing that, and I'll say to you, because you said it on my show, and I think you reset it on Josta's show too. But I mean, the amount of people that Tim has positively impacted through his recovery and his rehab, I do think that warrants at least, the recognition of he does help others. Because I think in light of all the shittiness, like that one positive at least seems to kind of be lost. And I feel like that I would hate that people would just assume that, oh, if you're an ex-convict or have spent any time in a jail or whatever, there is no rehabilitation for you. There is no redeeming quality for you. Yeah. So I at least would like to go on record and say that in my experiences, there is positive that comes out of it, but you have to work it. You have to work the various programs when you're in, when you're out, and more to the point. And this is me saying this. This isn't, an extension of you saying this or anything. You have to have accountability. You have to own your own side of your own shit. Yeah. And I think for me, that has been one of the biggest things that has been such a bummer, is to see no accountability on the other side of the fence, and seemingly everyone else is to blame.
This is where
I fucking hate that.
This is where I turn into, shit talker, 101.
You don't have to
on the internet. No. I'm just saying, like, as an avid internet guy, like, I'm saying he has done good things for people. But then again, like you also have to say, like, did other bad people throughout history do good things too? Like I really do feel that, fine. Throw a few bones in the win category, but there are so many bad things. Yeah. They outweigh the good things. And this particular use case scenario is that in my opinion, the bad things outweigh the good things tremendously. And it is not something that I am going to endorse, support, condone. Like, I don't want to be a part of anything that he has going on in the future. I don't want to be friends with him. There is no room for reconciliation between the two of us. I don't respect what he's done, and I'll never respect it. There's very specific things that happened in my own home that I'm not happy with. There's no amount of good that he can do moving forward to change my opinion. And that's for me. We can all sit here online and say, oh, I have a friend and, he went to jail and he did well and blah, blah, blah. Well, guess what? Like in this scenario, that's not the case. Yeah. And in other scenarios, it is the case. But I had to see that for myself and let me be the voice of the people and say, I was in the cave and I'm coming out and I'm telling everybody what's in the cave.
Yeah. Yeah. I just feel like that has been, for me, one of my biggest struggles with the online culture surrounding people who get incarcerated for various things, because it's just like, and mine was a lot more traumatic for me and my wife and stuff like that. And was a thing where I was like, between that and the death of a friend years before, it's like, it really provided a really glimpse behind like the fucking curtain, like of Oz, like where it's like, this is a story you see for about 2 minutes and you feel the need to fucking comment based on no actual facts that you know. And then you move on to the next story that pops up in your feed. Meanwhile, that is a life-changing moment for however many people. And to see people just talk shit when you don't know what actually is going on, I always feel like is very, it's a very hard thing to go through and experience.
Well, you know, it's funny in pop culture, and I'm not going to stray from the As I Lay Dying thing. You know, I watched like shows like The Voice in the past and The Survivor and all that stuff. I'm not like an avid watcher, but like everyone always, it's not about the TV reality, ecosystem is kind of like, yes, this person has talent, but it's the story. What disease do they have? What have they endured? Like, what is going to bring them to the finish line, and what can we rally behind? Whether it's a vocal thing or a dance thing or an acting thing or whatever it is. And in this case, the thing that I don't like is we're dealing with something like Rehabilitation. As I Lay Dying is such a good band, and the records are so good, but it has everything to do with all the members in the band and who wrote the material and what people, their memory of the band was. But what I'm going to say is like, there's so many people that like, I mean, there's so much bad footage that popped up online. And I was like, we all like, I think the whole band had that like, holy crap, this is what was going on. Like we had no idea, but we're glad we walked away kind of vibe. Right. It's like for those people in the comment section being like, oh, you know, this guy didn't hit that dog too hard, or this guy didn't freak out that hard, or he barely touched her. And I'm kind of like, how much do you love this band? Like, because the guys in the band don't love it as much as you do at this point. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's time to stop. And the only way me personally, Ken Susi, would ever support that particular project is if he wasn't a part of it. Other than that, I'm done. I'm completely. What's the meme online? I too have quit As I Lay Dying this week, or whatever. You know what I mean?
Something. Because something I had addressed with you when you were joining the band, especially given, you know, your tenure in Unearth at that time, I had asked you, is it weird to start something anew so far into your career? Obviously, I would very much assume, based on what you've been saying, that it was not hard to walk away from this situation. But is there a sense of like, fuck, I just wasted a few more years maybe that I could have put towards something more productive and better? Is there any of that you felt like you had to reconcile with at all?
No, you know, it was actually pretty awesome about the As I Lay Dying experience is that obviously I've been around the band for a long time. So there was times that Unearth was arguably bigger than As I Lay Dying, you know, and, you know, that flip-flopped in the early 2000s. But I'll say that having been there, having known all the people in the bands, I was honoring the project for what it was. I thought I was doing it like justice by being a named person, like a guy within the industry, to give it credibility for all the people that, you know, my friends that kind of left. So, and also another really cool aspect of it is that like, I am so happy that I did this because I gained so many new friends, right? Like within, you know, being out on the road, meeting new fans, meeting new people that might have not known who I was. That was really cool. Other people who got to see me in a different light. I didn't waste any time. And one of the most important things is that like, obviously like Nick Pierce ended up in the band with me. And that was a pleasure because Nick's the greatest drummer I've ever played with. And he's the nicest guy I've ever toured with. So that was obviously a pleasure. Again, Phil and I, even though he and I at times had creative differences, we're still friends. We golf together, like we hang out, you know, we do things, you know, like we go to lunch all the time. And, you know, we legitimately like each other's presence. Ryan Neff, I didn't know him all these years. And I'm so lucky to have been, at least for like the 3-4 years that I was in the band, to actually meet and tour with Ryan. Because Ryan is like, he's now like on the same level as like Phil and Nick Pierce and Buzz or anybody. He is one of my closest friends and I love him to death. And I don't even know what my life would be like if I never met him. You know what I'm saying? Like he's that great of a person. So the cool thing is that As I Lay Dying, the shows were fantastic. It wasn't about a paycheck because, like, you know, I have a side gig that I do well, and I've been in the music industry for a long time, and I've done well, and I've done real estate. Like, I've done well in life. But this was like a really great opportunity to like play in front of a large amount of people, potentially put together somewhat of a new record. You know, I only had like limited involvement, but from what I did work on, the songs got released as videos and singles. And all the women that were like attached to this band, my wife, Ryan's girlfriend, Nick's girlfriend, you know, like everybody, you know, Danny, like Tim's wife or ex-wife now, like they all got along. Everybody got along. That's a rarity too. There, you know, so like there was like times where we vacationed together, you know, like at the end of tours and stuff, and like even the girls to this day talk more than we do. So it is what it is.
I think that's the hard.
Bad things happened, and it ruined everything.
I think that's sometimes the hard thing when you get older is, and you know, I've kind of really been talking about this a lot more. Is just understanding that sometimes people have a moment in your life, and it doesn't negate the experiences that you went through with that person, but not everyone you meet has to be like a lifelong best friend, and it doesn't have to be that deep. Like I've been going through it a lot more with setting boundaries and stuff, where just kind of realizing like you don't really add much value to my life anymore. As a matter of fact, like kind of take away. And so needing to just kind of cut those people out. But it's a thing, I think, when you say that, people are like, oh, you're just so mean. Like, how can you do that to someone? And it's like, well, I don't know. I don't really, I'm not the same person, and I'm not the person that person thinks I am anymore either. So I kind of just need to remove them. But it doesn't negate that time that we had was good and it meant something. But I don't know. It's something I've been thinking a lot more about, because I think people are just like, well, I knew this person 17 years ago, so I guess we have to be friends forever. And it's like, no, you don't. No, you don't.
No, you have to get to know the people you used to know. And the new friends are the ones that are here for now. To be totally honest with you, like one of my favorite memories of being in that band is, so like I never met Ryan Neff. And then I met Ryan Neff literally, like I was supposed to do like show, like we were going to go into rehearsals right before the first tour. And I literally, like, Ryan Neff was finishing in Phil's apartment, where I was like going to go in and then like start playing with Phil to show him that, like, hey, I know all the stuff and work out the kinks. And Ryan was just finishing. So we had a quick like handshake. Hey dude, nice to meet you. And then like I played guitar with Phil. He went back to the hotel and started working on the stuff he needed to work on. And then I missed a little bit of rehearsals because I got sick and I had to go get some medicine at the doctor. So Phil knew that I knew all the material. I think my quote was, I should be able to sleep in a bush and, like, you know, and put on my shoes and go play a show for you. Don't worry about me rehearsing, you know, like that's how prepared I always am. And no, we played Vegas the first show. And like, I was obviously, there's a lot of eyes on me from the switch from Unearth to there and all that stuff. And like, literally we played like our first block of like 2 songs with As I Lay Dying, and Ryan and I retreated behind the stage, and Ryan just looks at me, and I have my in-ears in and I see his mouth moving, and I'm like, what? And I take my ear out, and he's like, do we get to do this every day? And I was like, yeah, dude. And he's like, that's so cool. And like, you know, we like, I picked up his, you know, we picked up our drinks, cheers. We, you know, we drank, and we're like, all right, cool. And like, we were ready. We were committed to this. We were definitely like excited and committed. And that was all ruined. It was all fucking ruined for no fucking reason. You know? Well, I'm not saying no. There's a reason. Yeah. There's no reason for the bad actions. And then the famous thing that I say to everybody is all Tim really had to do is get out of jail and just scream to a fucking mic and be cool. And that was hard.
I mean, in this day and age of, you know, look, like this is such an extreme, but I think we'll kind of prove my point. You know, obviously the shit that happened with the guys in Lost Prophets, it's a thing where you're like, fuck, it really sucks, because there's other members of the band that put in their time, effort, and you know, weren't around for friends and family and all that kind of stuff to build their career and legacies and so forth, to have it all taken away by the actions of one person. And then, you know, they ended up doing that band with Jeff. I forget what the band was called, but, you know, kind of gave them a second shot at getting to do something. So it always seems like when the band is kind of on the outs with the singer or whatever, it seems like usually the band tries to find a way to stay together to keep that chemistry intact that they've spent so much time building. Was there ever a talk or idea of maybe the rest of you doing something?
No, because the whole like starting over thing is bullshit. And like even Woven War, I loved Woven War. I love the guys in Woven War, but it's like they had to change the name, they had to do this, they had to rebrand, they had to like it was a whole fucking thing. And I don't think anybody has the appetite to like start from scratch right now for anything. What really happened was like when we broke up, like when everyone quit the band, basically, on Tim, it was kind of like one of those things where I believe it was Phil who asked Tim to step down. Like the fan base, like I believe what he said was something along the lines, and I might be misquoting this a little bit, but it was like the fan base doesn't deserve to be disappointed constantly. And it was one of those things where it was like, he said, you should step down. It's time. Like, or go, like, do whatever it is that you're going to do, but go get help. Like, it's kind of like you've ruined this thing and none of us want to be a part of it. And like, at least give us the opportunity to maybe move on. But he would never do that. This is all he has. This is his thing. And rightfully so. This is like, if you were to put if you put your mind into Tim's brain, he'd be like, I started this band and I was here before anybody else. And it's not right. Like this is my thing. And he's technically right. But there are other people that contributed to the success of that band, not just him. And because early As I Lay Dying was a good band. It wasn't a huge band. When Phil and Phil, Jordan, Josh and Nick all got together and they wrote those like really great records and all that other stuff. That's when the band got really good. So I believe what Phil said. I believe that the fan base should have something to rally around and be excited about without having to like feel icky for liking that band because of his actions, his regular actions. Because, this isn't the first time. This isn't even his second chance. This is third, fourth, fifth, So these guys, we did all the right things. We were in the shit. We fucking, we played the shows. We got the acceptance of the fan base again. The whole band just had a mass exodus, and we like the second iteration of the band recovered that with, obviously with the team in place, and it worked. People were liking us. People were giving us shows. They were asking us back on festivals. It wasn't just Tim, and Phil said it. Like he goes, I'd, step down, leave, like, please, like, do what do the fans want? And if, if people are going to comment on this, do the fans want to see a band without him? I don't know. But to be honest with you, I think it would be nice to, to see what that would be, but he'd never give it up over his dead body. He wouldn't. He feels he's done no wrong. He can go get fucking YouTube guitar players and drummers and shit and make them sign NDAs or do whatever the fuck he's going to do. Have at it, dude. I just refuse to think anyone's going to follow that after the fourth, fifth strike on you. They can't love the band that much. There's a limit to these things. And to be totally honest with you, dude, I'll even get into like why the band, like I'm here to tell you, I know it's not supposed to be like an As I Lay Dying thing, but I'll tell you everything that I've witnessed. If you want to ask the questions, I'll answer what I've witnessed because, no one can come after me legally. And, that's the thing that I can attest to is the things that I've witnessed. I'm not going to speculate. I'm not going to defame anybody, but I'm going to go out and say that Tim personally, with his statements after the band have I don't know, just depicted me and the other bandmates as unstable and just not like, just not like it defamed my character. The guy wrote something along the lines of like, Phil quit later, and the band took Phil's side, and others rushed to statements when they were worried about rumors that were circulating. Like that was on November 4th, right? He wrote that on the personal As I Lay Dying page to a fan that was commenting about stuff. That was incredibly incorrect. I think the 25 years that I've been in the band, I've been pretty fucking vocal and honest to people. And I wouldn't quit over a rumor. Christ, I was in the band with a guy that plenty of rumors circulate about. But the thing is those rumors were actually fucking true. If you want to know what exactly happened and why the band broke up, is because we were at Metal Fest and we had the greatest fucking time in my kitchen. We had all the band members, all the crew, everybody, and a few people were staying at a hotel. And then me being a good host after the festival. Now, mind you, him and his wife, they weren't vibing on tour. You know, things, we were unsure if his wife was even going to come to this like short weekend of shows. But I'm going to say, like, you know, they were staying at a hotel down the street, and I offered. I said, "Hey, you're going to go get a tattoo. My wife works from home. I got to go to Fishman. If your wife wants to just chill all day, my wife and your wife are friends. You're welcome to just stay here and save the money, and you can use one of our cars. You don't have to rent a car. Like, just go do your thing." But what ended up happening is, you know, my wife and I are having a kid. She's putting a bassinet, you know, together right now as beyond the screen. But we just announced to my whole family that we're having a baby. We got my mother crying, my father crying. You know, Tim's wife is witnessing this, taking video in our house. You know, like, it was a joyous occasion the day after Metal Fest. And then within 2-3 hours later, there was like an incident where, now mind you, you know, I'm just gonna pick up the fucking camera right now. I got these huge honking security cameras all over the house, and a label on the front door saying you're being filmed 24/7, right? And this guy like comes into my house in the middle of the night, corners his wife in my kitchen, and spits in her face, and then retracts 4 or 5 steps back and has some type of episode, which I've never seen out of somebody before in my entire life, and then starts screaming and running around my house for help. And it alarmed my wife. She woke up, and she's like, "What's going on?" And I'm like, "I've heard him scream for help before. I'm going to go see what's going on." But ultimately, you know, I'm not 20 years old. I'm not going to turn a blind eye to domestic violence. I'm not going to turn a blind eye to like improper behavior. You know, when shit happens, you fucking handle it. And in that scenario, I didn't know what happened. I separated them. I brought them down to my studio. I asked them specifically, what the fuck is going on? And is there anything I need to know? And he was just like, "Oh, my marriage, this and that." And I'm like, cool. I go upstairs. I ask Danny, what's going on? She tells me the truth. I actually pull up the camera footage in front of her, and I see exactly what was said. He spit on me. He threw a fit. I was trying to calm him down, the whole nine. And to be totally honest with you, that's what fucking happened. Later on, you know, he tried to change. I went back downstairs. I said, "I'm disappointed in you." And he's like, "I didn't spit on her face. I spit at her feet." And I'm like, "Why are you spitting in my house in general if you're going to lie about it?" You know? And the honest to God truth is, you're not going to insult me. I asked him to leave. Immediately, he left. And at that point, the rest is history. If Tim wants me to when I quit the band, he sent a message through his wife or, you know, through his wife's phone saying he would sue me if I ever released that footage, because he didn't know he was filmed without consent, or he was posting up like, you know, Danny would sue me, his wife. Mm-hmm. But like, ultimately, I'm not fucking scared. I have the receipts. If you want to, if with Tim's permission, if you want to check if I'm a credible source, if you want to see if I'm a upstanding person, I'll release it. If you want me to release it, that's fine, Tim. Like, I have no problem with it. But I'm not going to sit here and let you say things like, "Oh, Phil left the band," and then, or you were really distant from the band, and, you know, everyone was like trying to pull you back in, but you were just in this place and blah blah. You're creating a lie. You're creating a lie for the fan base, and it makes me look bad. It makes the guys look bad. You did something wrong. You have to own up to it, and that's what fucking happened. And to be honest with you, I sent the video to Phil. And I just said, "Phil, you are the other operating officer in this band. You are technically HR. You know, I prefer you don't share this with anybody." But I just said I have to quit the band. I'm out of here. I don't want to deal with this type of shit. And then I also said that we had money on the line for a tour and pyro and all this other shit. I said, "I'll finish the tour. I'll do the European tour as long as this guy has help and he goes to get help." You know, I really didn't want to be a part of the project anymore, but I did understand like how much money was on the line for those guys. It's a big investment when you go overseas with like, you know, scrims and pyro and all this other crap and the deposits that are laid down. And I didn't want to leave them high and dry, even though the severity of the issue was like so serious, but I was willing to see through that. But by the time it went into the As I Lay Dying, like band circle, that's when things like imploded. Nobody wanted to be a part of it anymore. They didn't care about the finances. They didn't care about anything. And that's really what went down, you know? And, you know, it is what it is. You know, what am I going to say? I'm telling the truth. I just don't like the, you know, the band broke up because of communication problems and everyone followed Phil or, you know, Tim literally blew up the tours that I was supposed to be on, right? With all the income that I was going to make on that. I never got paid on royalties for the songs that I did write or help write on the record. You know, he threatens me, obviously, again, as I said, with a lawsuit if I talk about or, you know, send footage around that he obviously knew because I have cameras and, you know, like in my common areas and a sign at the front door that he was being filmed and, you know, basically lying to me about online. I've been in this business for 20 years, right? 20 years, you know, 20 years and actually longer than him. And to portray the band and us like for leaving the way he did, I just don't think it's cool. And it is what it is. Just don't abuse your wife in my fucking house and put my integrity on the line. And someone needs to say something. I don't feel like this is the, like, you know, I didn't come on the show to intend to do so. But since we're in the moment, I'm going to fucking say it on your show over anybody else's because I love you as a person and people do deserve to know. Don't subscribe to something that's not good. But again, I have the receipts.
I think a bigger telling thing in that, and again, this is from my perspective. Actually, I'll kind of backtrack a little bit, kind of share something similar because it not to the severity of what you went through, but I think there just becomes sort of this thing. And so like you were saying, you had something very, very joyous in your life between you and your wife and your family that you were sharing with everybody. And it's now tainted forever by this thing that happened to you that affected you professionally. Now, again, the part I was going to say is this isn't to the severity of what you went through, but it's something that like is kind of forever a dark spot on us owning this house. My wife bought our house through a lot of hard work and sacrifices and dedication to that being the goal for us. And I remember at our housewarming party, because I, at the time, worked at the bar I'm back at now, and we had some of the bartenders and a couple of our regulars and stuff. And apparently something was said about somebody who was going through a breakup with somebody that's a regular at the bar at the time. And it got back to that person. And then they came to me when I was working one of my shifts and they just were like, fuck you, dude. And then like just treating me lesser than. And I remember being like, this moment that I was really proud of my wife for accomplishing has now been tainted by some fuckhead who had nothing, like I had nothing to do with this thing. And instead of having a great memory now, it's always tainted by this negative thing that this one dude did to kind of fucking ruin it, and other people kind of associated. And I ended up leaving that job because I was like, if you get that comfortable that you can just talk to me like that and you don't think there's going to be any repercussions, like, and I'm on the clock, so obviously I can't technically, but it's a thing where it's like, that fucking sucks. And I think it speaks volumes to the person understanding that they feel that they have some kind of control over you, that they can manipulate you to do whatever they want. And so I feel bad. I'm sorry that happened to both you and your wife and your friends and family, that, you know, your moment, something that should have been a very positive thing for everyone involved was tainted. Because like I said, going through something similar on a way lesser level fucking sucks, man.
Yeah. I appreciate that. But the thing that sucks the most, you know, the thing that sucks about this is that like none of us ever, you know, how to explain it? Like the guys in the band, for instance, I'm not going to name names, but like there's some really good people, right? A lot of really bad things happen to a lot of good people. Like, for instance, I don't have a band. Nick Pierce doesn't have a band. Ryan Neff's back to Miss May I and Phil's in USAUSAUSA. Like my career is stunted. You know, it was like literally overnight, right? And that kind of fucking sucks. I got to rebuild. I got to figure something else or whatever else I'm going to do. But it's just not like ideal for people to like to play with their lives. And, he keeps getting away with it. If you notice, like Nick Hippa and all those other guys left, there's things that are going on behind the scenes with even from the past members and him still to this day. And it's like, no one's talking about anything and no one's talking about, and that's totally fine. But all arrows point to the guy, right?
Yeah. It goes back to the accountability thing.
Yeah. And people, and it's not anything that, we haven't seen this, we haven't seen this type of stuff before. Like when we saw all the footage that came out online, like we were disgusted. No one knew it was that bad. We just had an inkling that like, hey man, something's off. Like this shit happens, right? Actually, you know what? I made a joke out of it. And I'll tell you the Ken Susi joke. And I even said this to Tim because I heard a rumor that Tim was spreading around that like through a friend of a friend, like, well, supposedly. I don't know if he's been spreading it or somebody else, but it was like Ken said that like, what happened in his house wasn't that bad. When he called me after, I had a real conversation with him. And those of you that know my persona and who I am, this is a funny joke. Like I said to Tim, like, hey man, like, I don't know what your relationship is like in the bedroom. Maybe spitting's acceptable. I don't know. I'm not going to judge you for that. I said, it's not that bad. Like, this isn't a bad situation if you just say that. But what I saw after was very sad. And I really think you should get help. And I think you need help, and I just said, like, the band's probably going to break up over it. And that was it. And I told him I was okay to still do another tour. And you know what I mean? I said I was being very upfront about my feelings. But ultimately, like, yeah, I said at one point, like, I don't know what your relationship's like. You guys might spit on each other every other day. I have no fucking clue. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what gets you guys off. But when you start screaming help and running around my house and you're throwing an emotional breakdown that I've never seen before. I in my heart, like deep in my heart, I felt like, God, like this is one of the saddest things I've ever seen. And that's the sad part is like, I don't hate him for what he did. And I wasn't like, oh, this is what a jerk. And I'll never, those weren't, my feelings were like, let me down, but it was also sad. And the thing is it's, there's no accountability. And he's on a, in my perspective, he's on the cycle of just doing the same thing over and over and over. And I believe like, it's like he's hiding in the hole until everybody accepts him again. And he's waiting to see if it's okay to come out, and he'll probably come out with a band, whatever it is, in the next couple of years or whatever. It's up to the fans to decide if they're willing to subscribe to it or not. But I'm wondering if like, yeah, would anybody, is there, would he ever step down? Would Phil and Jordan and the original guys ever get back together? That would be fucking cool. Even as a fan, I'd be into that. I'd love to I don't even care if I'm a part of it. I'd love to watch it.
Kind of the last question I have thinking about all this, and don't have to answer it if it's too personal of a question in light of everything we've been saying.
I'm wearing pants this time.
Yeah.
You're fine. You're good.
I know going through a lot of things, obviously you confide in your person, your spouse. How has this been for both of you to reconcile? Because obviously this is, like you said just a few minutes ago, like when you're like, I mean, part of my livelihood's gone now. Like, I feel like going through something like this probably would have brought you guys closer together and kind of strengthened your own relationship and marriage, because you could see how bad it could be and can be for others. Is that No, I appreciate you asking this. To be honest, my wife and I are very much New Englanders, where I say that and you laugh and but like we're very like fuck it, like just roll with the punches,
fuck it, and it's behind us. But there are moments of her and I saying things behind closed doors that are like, aren't you glad that like we're not going home to that right now? Like those simple like, we might be driving in the car and just say like, picture what it's like over there, and those are the quick things that we say to each other that are just kind of confirming, but there's never like a sit down, like, oh my God, our relationship and we have to process this and go to therapy. Like maybe other people. Like there was an incident that really bummed me out. I'll talk about this because this is exactly what I witnessed too. One of the main catalysts for everyone leaving so quickly too, other than like the severity of what happened. Mm-hmm. But like there was as I said before, we all vacationed together, and there was an incident in Greece where, Ryan brought his girlfriend out, and all the girls were there, and we're all on different floors in this Greek hotel. And everybody woke up to the screaming for help and out of, on the balcony and all that other stuff. And like, some of us are strong. Like my wife and I are strong people, but like, and I'm not saying that Ryan's not strong or whatever, but his girlfriend, they were in bed, and they're like, literally like, who's screaming in the middle of the night? And mind you, like, she's really not like a huge fan of the band. So she was also kind of like knows the situation and is kind of like there to like witness it herself, to be like, oh, is this a good place for my person to be? And the next thing you know, they wake up in the middle of the night to somebody screaming for help and breaking TVs with his head and running around the hotel, and and like having a domestic like disturbance event in a hotel. And like it got really bad. One of my best friends and Phil, Otto, who passed away, they went down to handle the situation. And they, handled it in the moment. But like there was a band meeting the next day. Like this is the first time anybody was ever like, this is something we can point to and say this is wrong. Because every other time it was like we're on the road and you hear, someone screaming for help in the back lounge. And the first time I heard it, I said to Phil, like, what's going on? And Phil was like, oh, I don't know. I don't know. This might be a part of like his process, like, oh, let me go check and let me go calm him down. Let me go see what's going on. And then like later on, it was very, Phil would be like, everything's okay. We talked everything out. Everything's fine. It's just, a little domestic stuff, nothing crazy. And he never alluded to like knowing anything about like, real domestic problems, you know what I mean? On the road, if anything was like, arguments or whatever. But there was plenty of times where there was like private meetings and people talking and whatever. And, and all that stuff. But the Greece thing was like the point where we all saw something and it was very embarrassing. And we all sat him down and said, if this ever happens again, I think Ryan said it best. He said something like, if you ever cross like what I see as moral, I'll be gone before you even know I'm gone. Like you'll be like looking for me for the show and I'll be in my living room, kind of thing. and that's what I love about him. But I felt really bad that like, I mean, we all rebounded. Like we all, we had the conversation and we still had a great vacation, and Tim and Danny were a part of the vacation. We didn't exclude them from any of the activities or anything like that. But, that was the warning. And unfortunately, later on, you're dealing with somebody who, posts a lot of blame to others. And you get to a point where it's like, how could you blame that person for not helping you when they're not equipped for help to help you, So it is what it is. And you know what? I'm fucking tired of talking about this shit. But I think one of the main drivers as to like why we're talking about this is because I went to a show and one of the dudes I've known in the industry for a long time is like, I heard rumors that there was Tim punched your wife and all this crazy stuff happened. And I was like, dude, no. I said, none of that happened. There's other things that happen. I can't talk about it, but know that like that, what you're telling me didn't happen. And I know there's a lot of people that are wondering what really did happen. And there's a lot of silence. And some of the silence also online is like, people like, how come no one's talking about it? Like, they don't understand that we cannot. But you know what? Yeah. Guess what? I'm an eyewitness to this shit. I'm not fucking scared. I have nothing to lose. I'm not saying anything that's not, I'm not saying anything that's illegal. This is my perspective. This is what I've witnessed. And at this point, I don't give a shit. Fucking old. Pants me. I'm not going to run and pick up my pants real fast. It's going to take me a while to get down and pull up my pants. I'm getting old,
Kind of a change in topics, almost an hour in, but something that you've talked about a couple of times now. So you're going to be the second person that's been a part of this 500th episode week that basically is going to be a new parent for the first time. I said congratulations when you told me somewhat recently about it, but kind of as someone who finds kids fascinating but does not want them for myself or my wife, I should change that. She doesn't want them either. I didn't make her not want kids. How has it been to kind of the infinite what ifs and all that kind of stuff? How has it been to know that like a kid's come on the way and your life's going to change in a completely different way than it ever has?
Like I've done a lot of what you call spring cleaning to the house. Like we have extra bedrooms, and I like, dude, it's been a thing because I have so many guitars and they occupy so many closets in this like nice house that we have that I'm like, I have to like find room for them all. I'm like cleaning out stuff. I'm finding things in my closet that closets that I haven't seen in 20 years. So it's been one of those things. But like last night I was like trying to put together a stroller and I'm like, God damn it, I'm a fucking guitar player. This is stupid. You know what I mean? Like I should have my guitar tech do this. Like I have no patience, but no, I'm good with my hands and I wanted this. I always wanted this. And what's actually ironic about like my life, it's definitely, it's weird. Like I always in Unearth, I obviously like hung out with a lot of chicks and drank and did all the things I wanted to do in my life. And I've never been shy about talking about my experiences and all the parties I've had and did. But no, it's like now I'm at a point where like I just back then I always just say this is my career. I don't want wife and kids and all that stuff to get in the way of that. And it's kind of crazy that like literally the day that, we announced to my family that we were having a baby, it was like the band fizzled. So it's almost like karma. It's like the universe was telling me like, hey, you've been at it for 25 years. You've been up and down in the industry. It is what it is. Just enjoy this for what it is right now. And the coolest part is that my wife and my work are really supportive and saying stuff, like they still want me to tour and they still want me to do the things. We have a great support system. We have my whole family living on the same street. So it's a really great situation for us. But as of right now, I just like, I kind of do want to parent, be a dad. I want to like see that through. And I don't know, every single bad thing I've ever done on the road, I feel like is coming back to me. Like on the way, I feel like, even the when I was in my 20s and, you'd be sleeping on the bus and someone's like too drunk and barfing in the hallway or peeing somewhere they shouldn't or whatever. It's like you get out of your bunk and you're like, okay, buddy. And, like it's time to go to bed. Like, are you done throwing up? I feel like I'm just going to fucking do that shit all over again. But I'm looking forward to it. We're having a boy. So it's going to be one of those things where hopefully my kid either is interested. I hope they're like-minded where they're interested in photography or sports or music. Luckily I'm pretty eclectic with my hobbies. And I think we'll fall somewhere in line with that,
They're all very expensive and not child-proof.
I want fucking cribs. I never realized. It's so stupid. What the hell do people put their babies in? It's goddamn fucking, I don't know. It's like royalty shit. It's like costs a ton of money. Who cares?
I saw something really amusing a while back. It was like a meme. And it was this guy who's like, I've been using this baby gate wrong the whole time. You don't put the baby in the baby gate. You put the baby gate around you. So that way the baby can't bother you.
Yeah. That's what I'm going to do is build a circle and I'm just going to sit in the middle of it and no one can get to me.
What is something, because it's funny, like, as you were just kind of saying, like, the band kind of fizzled out and all that kind of stuff. As cliche as it is, it's, like, when one life ends, kind of another begins. So it almost seems like, serendipitous timing to just kind of have all this happen and play out the way it did. Cause if the band would have kept going, new album and all that kind of stuff, like, I feel like, you probably would be, not saying that you wouldn't make it back for the birth and all that stuff, but definitely one of those where it seems like, you might miss out on a lot of things. And I know from talking to like, a handful of guys that have been doing this for a while with kids, a lot of them are like, I didn't need to play that show on this day to miss, these things. I would have rather have had those experiences. So I think it's kind of good that you are going to be home and kind of be changing things up.
Yeah, I need it. And my wife's just beyond me, like, making comment, but like, she's right. Like, music before I left As I Lay Dying, about a year before I left, I don't know. I needed to stop for a minute. I lost one of like two of my best friends. And that one friend like was inseparable to me throughout the Unearth years. And luckily he lived in San Diego and was friends with As I Lay Dying. So when the time came that I joined As I Lay Dying, it was almost like, oh, well, Otto's going to come, right? You know, This guy's been my front house guy with Unearth for so many years. And then he was my side fill guy. So he was on my side of the stage, you know, like a guy who, you know, I spent all my time with. We're inseparable. And when he passed away, it ruined me. So to like, not to say that like I'm one of those guys who's tragically like never going to recover from this, but the last year that I spent in As I Lay Dying was one of the hardest years of my life. You know, just like looking and glancing over to the left side of the stage and not having him around was awful. So it ruined touring for me, like a lot, you know, and it changed everything for me. But like it's cool because like things happen and people, you know, I don't know. It's life, right? It's a part of life, but it definitely like changed my perspective on things. And it didn't. In the meantime, I needed a break anyway. It was just too much, especially being a part of As I Lay Dying and a band that he worked for. So I have my wife and I have regular conversations with his mom, and it's never easy, but it was a constant reminder of I don't know. My touring world just was never the same without him. It still isn't. So it's probably good that I'm like embarking on this next chapter. It's shitty. You should never lose somebody that's that close and so young, you know?
I mean, literally this house, I moved in here with two of my best friends. And, you know, I've had a few others, but they're not here. And I still am. Like, I you know, you said the Ken Susi joke in a thing that's not funny. I joke all the time, you know, I won the roommate survivor. I'm still here. It's hard sometimes, like, you know, when fixing up this house, I think one of the hardest things was, you know, I was very excited to spring clean and do a bunch of things and get rid of a bunch of shit. Because when you live, that's the weird thing about buying a house that you've been living in for 13 years. You're like, man, if I ever own this, I'm doing this. And then you just try to like sprint to do all of it immediately. Yeah. And that's not how house renovation works. And it was a thing where I remember tearing down the bar that was built. Someone had built it at some point because I was like, this thing's shit and I needed to get rid of it for the space. Yeah. And I just fucking started losing my shit because I was like, I remember my one buddy and I going to the bar that's like a few blocks down from our house, grabbing some to-go beers. We got the keys to this place that day, and they're like, yeah, don't start moving in until like a week later. And we were like, fuck it, let's go have some beers in our house. Yeah. And as I was tearing that bar down, I just was thinking about like that night. And it's really weird when you have these memories associated with these people who mean so much to you that it's one of those things, man. Those memories don't go away. And you kind of have to, I mean, not reconcile, but you have to just kind of take those for what they are and just, you know, that's how they live on. It's through those things. It's cool too. You know, I haven't told anybody yet, but I'll probably make an announcement. I have, so when Otto passed away, his mom was nice enough to give me some of his ashes. He was cremated. He wanted a Viking funeral, right? So like, you know, send a ship. Like that's so him. That's so him. But he, no, she gave me, she gave me some of his ashes, and I built some guitars with my brother next door. He has a CNC machine and stuff. So I was gonna tour with Otto, like in the paint. Like, so I have a painter that's currently infusing his ashes into the actual wood of the body. So if like someone happened to like take the guitar and clear the paint off of it,
the ashes wouldn't be gone. He's embedding it into the actual wood, so it's almost like a layer in itself. So my plan at the time with As I Lay Dying, one of the things that was going to make me feel a lot better about that whole situation was I was going to tour with him, and I was going to take the guitars out and like, you know what I mean, and like have his ashes in the guitar. And his mom was like so psyched on that. So unfortunately, with the derailment of the band and all that other stuff, that project got put aside a little bit. Like the guitars are still in development, but I told the builder to kind of slow his roll on it. It's not an immediate. But yeah, that's happening too. And I was like really, really proud of that.
That'd have been pretty cool. I do like the idea of the Viking funeral. I know in the brief time I got to know him, he was a very jokey dude, but also very serious and very kind. Yeah.
He's the dude. Everybody said I was questionably gay with him.
I mean, if your best friend, I was just reminded, my wife was hanging out with some work people for a bachelorette party thing. Yeah. And it was funny. We were talking. She was like, someone was like, you remember when we were at such and such outing at so-and-so's house that works with all of them? And they were like, and so-and-so thought your husband and his best friend were gay. And she goes, it happens all the time. Everyone just thinks the two of them are gay. And I was like, I think it's because he's like almost 6 foot and looks like a bear. And like, obviously I would be the twink in that situation or a cub. Yeah. And I was like, but if you're not potentially labeled as gay with your best friends, are you really even best friends?
Well, it's funny too. Like Otto and I, a lot of our friends, like at home and stuff, are have different sexual, what they're into, orientations, and he and I, Otto, like we always hated to go to bars that were like straight, like regular all American, cock and busters, whatever you call them, like bar and grill, and we always find the closest gay bar to you know what I mean, like our queer, gay, whatever bar, and we'd go there, and our move was always like sit down, fucking put on Electric Six Gay Bar on the jukebox, rip drinks, and just have a blast with like the people that are there. And a lot of times it was awesome because like most of our fan base wasn't there, so it was like we weren't going to get quote unquote we wouldn't get recognized there, but it's so awesome. I remember a bartender once was like, you guys are clearly not, you guys are clearly straight. Like, what are you doing here? And I was like, you kidding me? This place is fucking clean. There's a lot of good, cool dudes. Like, I'm getting awesome drinks. He's like, why wouldn't I be here? And the bartender's like, yeah, you're right.
Dude, that reminds me when my wife and I went to San Antonio, because gay bars are our other thing that we like to go to when we travel. Yeah. And we went to this one. I can't ever remember what it's called, but it was like, I mean, you'll know exactly the vibe. It was a club but that's open at like 11 a.m. when there's nobody there. Yeah. And Beyonce's Lemonade had just come out, and we're really all about that record. And so we just took it over the jukebox and started playing, and some queen across the thing was like, "Who? Oh my God, who's playing? Is this you? We're buying shots. We're all doing shots." And then for like an hour, we just were all best friends, like immediately. Love it. Walked out of that place, and they did that thing where you open the door and it's still fucking daylight, and you're like, "Fuck me! What questionable decisions did I just make?"
Yeah. It's stuff like that all the good memories that like you have of your friends and have of your people, and for me it was like, I mean, going back to like recapping what you're saying, it's like I'm happy to be starting a new chapter in my life, but that old chapter I kind of need a break. I need a break, like I'm very happy that Unearth's like, still doing what they're doing, and like I'm happy. I'm bummed that like, that's a band that I started that, I couldn't finish. I actually didn't want to walk away from it, but I had to, kind of a scenario, and this As I Lay Dying thing blew up. But I believe good things come to those that are patient, and I'm just gonna stay patient. And I'm a talented guitar player, and if anybody's looking, fucking what's up, I do get a lot of like Instagram messages from like, I love people taking their shots, like kids got to take their shots, but they're like, I have a local band from like, Lincoln, Nebraska, and having Ken Susi in the band would be the sickest. And I was like, I agree. I would write back. Like I respond to everybody. So I'm like, I agree. It would be sick, but I'm sorry. I don't live there. So I can't do it. I'm obviously like looking to do fun projects that are either digital, right? If I'm going to tour again, it has to be the right scenario. It's not about money per se. It's about comfort. I'm just not at a point in my life where I want to risk my life with somebody falling asleep at the wheel with 20 guys in an E350 Sprinter. And at this point in my life, I have too much to live for.
I'm trying. I can't remember the guy's name. Who? Frankie Valley. You can go join the corpse of Frankie Valley.
You don't want me on that crew. I've been I think you've seen my Instagram stories. I'm a fucking total advocate. I'm willing to go to jail for murdering the people that are responsible for putting him like in the position that he's in. I am so disgusted that they're running tracks and the guy's 900 years old and there's somebody capitalizing off of that. It makes me so aggravated. Now, I'll tell you a great story though. When my wife and I first started dating, or just into our relationship, we saw babe. Who did we see? What was the guy, the crooner that you love? Come on,
new dude or older?
No, old. Who's the guy that was 90 that we saw? What's his name? Babe, the only show you want to see, and I got the free tickets. You might have to edit this out.
Okay.
It was okay. So at Fishman, my wife's like, I want to see
Tony Bennett.
Yeah.
Okay,
She goes, do you have any connections to Tony Bennett? And I go, no, I have no connection to Tony Bennett. And she goes, okay, if something happens and you get Tony Bennett tickets for some reason, I need to go see Tony Bennett. And I was like, okay, cool. It's never going to happen, right? If it's Cannibal Corpse, yeah, fuck yeah. There's a 90% possibility when they roll through here, we're seeing Cannibal Corpse, right? But not Tony Bennett. So I'm at Fishman, and the acoustic guy he sits like, we have a bench. We have two benches. And he looks at me and he goes, I'm going to see Jerry Seinfeld. My daughter bought me tickets. He goes, do you know anybody that wants to fucking go to Tony Bennett? And I just like, I just got deflated. Like I put my head down and I was just like, oh, I do, because I personally I like Tony Bennett, but I didn't necessarily want to go to the show. But I promised her if tickets were to fall on me for some magical reason, which was such a long shot, I would take them. So sure enough, I'm like, yep, I'll take them. I'm going. So I go to this Tony Bennett show, and he's amazing. He's 90 fucking something years old. And he stood there, and I even just told her, like as he's singing, he was killing it, right? He didn't take any pee breaks. He had to have been wearing a diaper. I was thinking the whole time, like, is he wearing a diaper? Because there's no way he's 93 and going for like 2 hours just singing straight. Guy didn't even sit in the chair the whole time. You know what I'm saying? There's people at the nursing homes that won't even, you know what I mean? That can't even stand up at his age, right? So, and I kept like leaning over to April, and I was like, oh man, I was like, that like if he drops dead, this is going to scar everyone for life. Like, cause he's just that old. I was just thinking like, what if he dies? This is insane. Like, I loved it and he did a great job. But after the show, I go backstage cause I have the Fishman credentials. I meet the guitar player. I'm like, hey, how you doing? Blah, blah, this, that, and the other thing. And then she's just like, I really want to meet Tony Bennett. And I'm like, we're probably not. But I go, you know what? Act like you know. And she's like, what do you mean? And that people just got up and started walking to this private room. And I was like, all right, follow me. And we just we went in and like we took this elevator up with all these people we didn't know. And then we got up there and we're just waiting outside of a door. And I'm like, you're going to meet Tony Bennett. Like just pretend if anybody tries to move you, just say like, oh, I don't know where I am. Like pull one of those. Tony Bennett like rolls up. He walks right by my wife and he's like, hey, how you doing? Beautiful. And he called her beautiful. And I was like, oh my God, that's so cool. And then he like went into his room and then we got kicked out. Someone was like, hey, are you supposed to be here? And we're like, oh, I don't know. Is the bathroom near here? We was just being fucking stooges, but I was gonna, I was so psyched. I was so psyched that she got to meet him. But anyway, the moral of my story is Tony Bennett was still kicking it at like in his 90s on stage, where Frankie Valley, somebody's like, I don't know if he's a robot. I don't know if he's like from the Ripley Believe It or Not museum and just like his mouth just moves. I have no fucking idea what's happening. It's like Black Mirror.
Yeah.
Maybe he's the next episode of Black Mirror because Black Mirror is coming back. Maybe that's the whole thing.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. Like in the last couple of years, I've gone to see some more of that. Like Rod Stewart, I had never gotten to see him. Been a fan since basically being a kid because my mom and dad really loved him.
Yeah,
and getting to see him, it was so weird to see. I mean, he's playing Sheds, and you're like, there's like fucking 80-year-old broads just like creaming their fucking Depends like over him still, and you're like, he's still fucking got it. And it's like wild to me that it's like, to me, it's cool to kind of see some of those kind of style of artists and stuff, because it's like Rod Stewart and kind of, you know, like a Tony Bennett and some of those people, like they are kind of the last era of like what I would say are true rock stars, like in the traditional sense of like we're around in the heyday of like the 60s and 70s and kind of did it all and are still here performing and never really kind of sacrificed any of their artistic integrity to still kind of do their thing. And they still do it because, I mean, they probably make a shitload of money, but seems that for the most part, it's still the genuine love of making music and performing.
One of my favorite bands, probably top 5 of all time, I'm going to see tonight. Air Supply is playing in Boston or Medford, but I can't wait for that show. They're hands down. If you ever want to see a whole room of hot older ladies screaming every lyric, like it's a fucking Snapcase show from 1996. Go see Air Supply. They're so awesome. If they go to your town, like they're on tour, hit me up. I'll get you in. But they're so sick. Air Supply is like the greatest. So trust me, I'm all about it.
Dude, it was so funny, like going to see the Refuse show earlier this past week, and Quicksand's on, and like my 2 friends have never seen Quicksand. I don't think they know anything about Quicksand.
Yeah.
Obviously I did, and I've seen him plenty of times since I've come back, and even had Sergio on forever ago after he left Deftones, or got kicked out, however you want to put that. And it was a thing, like it was just so funny to keep looking at all these like 40-something, 50-something dudes just looking at their clock, like looking at their phones, yawning, and you're like, dude, fuck all of you. What happened?
In their defense, and you're talking to one of the biggest, like, I love Refuse. Refuse is one of my favorite bands of all time. So I'm not talking shit by any means. But I will say back in the day when they were actually active, there was no cell phones. I don't think people were holding that were like, you know, texting with each other, but those shows weren't good. Like they stopped playing because I don't know. I always believed that band was from the future, because I felt like they knew something that everyone else didn't, and the fans didn't like necessarily gravitate towards them. But the second they pulled it off the table and broke up, they became the biggest fucking band in the world. But it was fucking crazy that they didn't come back and capitalize on that. But like, I'll say that like it's the same shit. I think everybody missed out on Refused because they were too like cool for school at that time. And then now that they're back, they're old and they can't fucking handle it. It's bizarre. I'm like, In the Shape to Punk to Form, or whatever that record's called, is like
The Shape of Punk to Come.
whatever it's fucking called. It's one of the greatest records of all of hardcore, you know, history. It's definitely on the Mount Rushmore of sick records.
Well, I think the thing, and I'll get off on the Refuse thing here in a second, but I think the thing that's interesting, because, you know, talking to Dennis years ago, is, you know, artists are kind of beholden to this thing of like, you have to appease people that are trying to catch up to where you are. Because like when you're being inspired touring the new record, you're probably already starting to write the shit that you're going to be excited about to then record whenever you get to. And it's like everyone really liked Fan the Flames of Discontent and so forth. And then it's like, but that didn't sound like Shape of Punk. And so therefore it was like, oh, we fucking hate this record. And I mean, we see it all the time where bands are like, fans are essentially an album behind at all times because it takes them that little bit. That's been the only thing that I think has been good about the idea of EPs and singles kind of coming back, is that you get to be a little bit more experimental as an artist. And it's not so far out of left field when you've been waiting 2, 3, 4, 5 years for a new record that you're like, well, what the fuck is this? And you're like, oh, well, this is what I was doing a few years ago, but like now you're getting to hear it now. There's a little bit more immediacy to allow for the creativity of an artist to kind of happen in real time now, I feel like, and share it with fans.
So there's been many records. I'm actually looking it up right now. Okay, so there's a bunch of records like that were, I feel like didn't get the fair shake back in the day. So there was a band called 12 Tribes. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but one of my favorite records from that time period was a record called Instruments. And Unearth took them out so many times. And even Beloved, that band Beloved, though, like those two bands at that period of time, I was always like, God damn it, these are the greatest. Like these bands are so great. But and I remember being at Hellfest once and 12 Tribes played and Beloved played. And I remember saying like, I was such a big fan. And I was like wearing out my Beloved CD at the time. And people were just like, yeah, that's a band's band. And like, I get why you like that. It's a band's band. And like, I still go back and listen to like some of those records. And I'm like, God damn it. They were so fucking good. And that just happens sometimes with bands, right? It just does.
Well, I mean, like that was something because I think if everything goes well, I think I kind of bullshitted my way into another chat with Jesse from Killswitch when he's here in town on Tuesday. And one of the things he was like, what are you thinking? Because like I kind of was like getting high and I was like, oh, I should see if Jesse's still into doing this thing so I can fire off an email to the publicist in time. And I think we're just going to do it. But it was funny because like, good.
I was going to say, ask him about the time I slammed my door on my cat. He'll tell you. He'll give a great story about my cat. Yeah.
Okay. So something I had told him though was because I had messaged him a few weeks ago when I had Dwid from Integrity on. And I was like, dude, I want to kind of thank you personally because like you were one of those people I remember wearing Integrity shirts way back when you were first kind of starting Killswitch and so forth. And I was like, I think people kind of forget how like important that cosign for and from a band is. And that was something that I was going to kind of talk to him about is just sort of like why that's important. Like Josta talks about it all the time. But I also feel like Jost is only like, it's only these bands from this era that it matters the cosign for.
It kind of does. It kind of does. No, yeah, I don't wear a lot of band shirts on stage, but yeah, no, Integrity was very important. I think All Out War was very important. Unearth wouldn't exist if it wasn't for like bands like All Out War and like what they were doing, Hatebreed and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's always good to like, I think like I was a huge Pantera fan, but I wasn't like a Pantera fan in the sense like I watched all their like home movies and stuff like that. But I think I was a bigger Crowbar fan. Yeah. Like when I actually dived into like what Crowbar was like in those early records. And I remember somebody in one of their shots was wearing a Pantera shirt. And I was like, it didn't turn me on to Pantera anymore or any less, but I was always like, oh, that's so fucking sick. They're friends, you know? That's cool.
It's so funny doing this show and kind of I think people like I had Lorenzo on recently that hasn't aired yet, but
I love
what oh yeah. I've been after him for a while and it was just like, yeah, this is cool. We're finally doing this. But it's just been so cool because I think sometimes like me being my age and I like, you know, I'll see my stats and I know like what my bread and butter is for a demographic and it's men that are like 18 to 40 something. And sometimes I'm like, man, like Lorenzo was like, you know, All Out War and like, you know, fucking Biohazard and Madball and like all this shit. And it's like, sometimes it's like, I'm sure these are the cliche bands to like younger kids where they're like, I guess. But I also hope that it's like, you know, sometimes like, I think it was wearing my Legia, like Death Row shirt during the Lorenzo thing. And I think you like pointed at it, but it's one of those where it's like to a lot of people, like Legia is probably not a thing to most people. But I hope that like by doing this, maybe someone's like, oh, I don't know Quicksand. I don't know Legia. I don't know All Out War. I don't know any of these bands that you guys are talking about. And then even beyond hardcore or whatever, it's like, yeah, you're talking about Air Supply. I'm talking about Rod Stewart. Like, fuck it. Like, let's go see. Like having Dennis DeYoung from Styx on here. Like, I'm sure most people will probably be like, you're a metal hardcore show. Why the fuck do you have the guy from Styx on your podcast? And it's like, why the fuck wouldn't I?
Yeah. I tried my hardest. It's funny that you brought up Legia. When I made their records, well, the first record specifically, I was trying my hardest to make them the modern day Poison the Well. I even used like I tried my hardest. So like I wanted that band to be so big just because like I was like really all in on like doing production and stuff on the side. And I was just like, I think that record did pretty well. I think it was pretty fucking cool.
I've been seeing some resurgence of Bad News kind of getting some love again. Every time I try to reach out to Ryan after the fact, like he was kind of on it for a little bit and then just disappeared again. And it's like, man, what the fuck's going on with those guys?
There's a lot of stuff going on in that band. Bad News was the second record, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So did I ever tell you, have we ever talked about that record? Like,
Yeah, we did, because after I posted the Ryan episode, you're like, let me come on and talk about recording bad news.
Oh, okay. I already talked about this. All right, I'm broken.
Making it like a party, like in recording.
Yeah. We had a party. We were fucking party.
Yeah.
So sick. Anyway.
Yeah, no one got spat on.
But Lorenzo, they should have, but not really. Lorenzo is one of the kindest dudes. From what I remember back in the day, like, he's still a great guy. Love him to death. I haven't seen him in years, but I'll just say that, like, he's a pleasure to be around. He's just so great. Like, I remember him back in the day. Before Sworn Enemy was called Sworn Enemy. They were called, I think it was Mindset. And my drummer of Unearth at the time, Mike Rudberg, had the Mindset 7-inch, and he played it for me. And he's like, "This band's so hard." I was like, "All right, cool." So I think I was filling in with Diecast.
Oh shit! Okay.
And we played, and I think Mindset opened, and I remember talking to Sal and Lorenzo, and just being like, "You guys are fucking awesome." And I became somewhat like friendly with them and stuff, but not until we did the Unearth Poison the Well tour with Sworn Enemy. That's when we all we became like close. And like Lorenzo and all those guys, Paulie, Sal, Mike, the bass player there, and Rafi, they were just like, every day was a cartoon. Every day was like, it was hijinks and cool shit. And it was never malicious or bad. It was always funny and awesome. Like everything oh man, that band, I can't speak high. Like, I love all those guys individually. Like, they're just so great.
I'm really hoping with this sort of resurgence of that era of bands, because like Biohazard's, like, honestly, never thought I'd see Biohazard come back together with that lineup. And it seems like it's doing well. I think they're recording. And then it's like, obviously now, like, Paradise Slaves is essentially Brock from 36 and most of Diecast, essentially. But it's like, I'm hoping, like, because like right now, Poison the Well, Glassjaw, they're out on tour or getting ready to. That I'm hoping like a lot of these bands will kind of get love that maybe didn't. Like, it's kind of crazy seeing like E-Town, which I think everyone just thinks of as a joke to a degree, like the older kids. And it's like, no, E-Town fucking rips, dude. Yeah, and I know you think Mandibles is like the it song and that's all that they are, but dude, they are fucking rad ass bands. Same with like Candiria. Maybe like it'll give Candiria a second leg that they should have always had. Yeah. Candiria was directly somewhat responsible for the launch or the impact that Unearth had. Unearth has never played a show with Candiria, right? We've been to a lot of their shows. We're massive fans. Back in those days, it was very likely to play shows with them, but I don't think we ever played a show. And so if you listen to Candiria, they're very like off time and awesome and super technical, and like the singer, like everything's awesome about Candiria. I'm a huge fan. But the way Hellfest was set up, they were on the main stage, which was like on one side of a massive gymnasium type thing. And then we were on a smaller stage in the corner right across. So one band ended, the other band, like, they would run to the other stage and vice versa. It would happen all day, right? And so Unearth was still like a baby band, and we got a late time slot somehow at Hellfest, like right after Candiria. And we, as like New England metalcore kids, you know what I mean? We were like, oh, we're gonna do, like, we really thought like we're gonna do so well after Candiria, because the delivery of their heavy stuff is a little more like, it was a little more like well thought out and educated, and and like the off timing, and it's pretty linear music, to where Unearth, I felt at that time, was very bouncy and dynamic. We were like really excited with that time slot, but then there was like a front house in the middle of this gymnasium, so Candiria went well over their time slot. And it was like one of those things where everyone's like turning around, and like the Hellfest people were like, start playing. And we had such tremendous respect for Candiria, where we're like, I'm not playing a fucking note until they stop. Like, I don't care if it cuts into our set time. Like, I just have to, like, we were just like, we have too much respect for them. Like, there's no way we're even going to play them. But the second, like, people like were definitely like at the end of their set, like coming over to the stage, because they saw Candiria, right? And it was starting to get like to the point where it was like, okay, they're going a little too long. So they started migrating over to our side of the stage. And the second they stopped,
It was like, we're on Earth for fucking blah, you know, and like it was pandemonium. And Candaria gave us that, like, you know, that bump because, like, you know, it is what it is. They put on a fantastic show. I was happy. I was watching them the whole time. I was so psyched to see Candaria. But you know, the difference between our two bands and the fact that, like, you know, maybe the set was going a little too long, whatever, it helped us significantly, and that gave us, like, Unearth, like a little bit of a bump at that point where we needed that little bump. And from then on in, it was almost like people really paid attention to us. We started selling a lot of merch. People were like going into the cars and, like, you know, like studying the lyrics to sing along, you know, like too. And that was a turning point. It's actually the only time I think I ever called my family after a show, and I was like, oh my God, you would never believe it. Like, we went on stage and everyone knew us. That's crazy. You know, I wasn't in a bar in front of like 25 people or 100 people that didn't give a shit. This is like the first time I was like, and people were screaming the lyrics. It doesn't make sense. It's everything I always wanted.
It's so funny to have those kind of moments, like, that seemingly in the grand scheme, like, you've gone to do so much bigger and arguably better, but like, those are the moments that you'll probably remember the most because it meant more to you, and it was your firsts in those things.
Yeah, bands are somewhat weird because the good moments where you're like fighting the hardest, and you get, like, you finally get that, like, you know, like, you know what it is? If you were like saying that the world's flat for years,
sure, right? As you do.
yeah. Like, no. You know what's really funny? I always, like, I love Steph. You know, Steph Carpenter.
I knew that's where you were going.
So he's a flat earther, so I don't want to throw him under the bus, but I always do say, like, I love talking to him about, like, that type of stuff because, like, it's not maybe I believe that the Earth's flat or not, right? But I'm rooting for the flat earthers because I want the Earth to be flat. So everyone's like, God damn it, I was wrong. And that guy was right. I want the flat earthers to be right. It's not about, it's just like a rooting for the underdog thing. I don't believe in I don't know if I believe that the Earth's flat. But anyway, the point I was trying to make is that when you're in a band and you're in a garage or you're in a basement, which Unearth was a basement band. We played next to a furnace and a boiler in Winthrop, Mass. That got flooded all the time. I would say that you're technically, you know, preaching the word of your bullshit and what you believe in the small confined room, and you take it out of that room and you taste test it with all these different audiences. And then there's times where, like, when you first start out, you're touring for a year and you're nobody and you're still, like, doing the circuit and you get some sort of pat on the back from fans, like, oh, I kind of like you guys, and what's your story? Like, you go to the merch table and people have, like, a lot of questions of where you're from, and they're kind of like figuring out who you are. And those were, like, pretty exciting times, but they were also, like, depressing time because you're like, are we ever going to do anything? Is heavy metal going to be a thing that's, like, people care about? You know, like, it seems to work for Earth Crisis and Hatebreed and other people, but are we, like, is metalcore not a thing? You know, like, or whatever it was that we were doing at the time, we just weren't sure if the world's going to like it. And then when you finally get that confirmation that there's a group of people that congregate to a place and then, like, go crazy for your band, that first time is so unbelievably genuine that it gives you the muscle to fight through all the next, like, 20 dog shit shows you do to get to the next good one. And that was kind of like Unearth's thing, like, where we finally got that confirmation. And obviously the next show, probably the next day, probably sucked wherever we're playing, but we were, like, still on cloud 9 from that last night. And we'd always be like, okay, every day, we just got to get back to, like, what that was and, like, find those people. And, like, you keep at it and it gives you that, like, it's like doing reps at a gym, and then finally it happens. And then, like, you're stoked. Like, there's luck and there's also talent involved, and they have to, like, converge at the same time. And luckily we hit that wormhole and we got what we got at the time that we got it, you know?
Fuck, I just kind of lost my train of thought because something popped up on my screen that I thought was, like, stopping something. Fuck, where was I going to go? Totally lost train of thought.
It's okay. We're talking about getting big for the first time, or people, like, remembering shows. Like,
so, like, how much of that do you feel like that process of believing in yourself when kind of no one else does and kind of breaking through eventually. How much of that have you taken into so many of your other facets of your career that are not music, like your professional life?
Fishman 1000%. I Larry Fishman, I think I've probably said it, like he's the godfather, right? Like I have a tremendous amount of respect for Larry Fishman and Jason Canberra, like the COO of Fishman. But there was a time when I first joined up with Fishman, I wasn't necessarily a office guy, per se. I would go into an office, but they were trying to groom me to be a product manager or a brand manager or whatever. But there were certain people that were very old school that were kind of tied to Fluence, the project. Mm-hmm. And they looked at me almost as like a double guns out, guy at the office just trying to make things happen. Now, mind you, like in my defense, when you're in a touring band, it's like the show's got to happen. And then like you got to get, do everything you have to do to get to the show and to like finish and like do the show without any hiccups, whether your guitar's broken, you need to go find a part, or something's broken and you need to get it fixed. Like it's always problem solving and making sure the show works at the end of the day. So I took that mentality to Fishman, and I was working my ass off to try to like, the first day I walked into the building at Fishman, I said to Larry Fishman, he asked me, he's like, can you do me a favor? Just write me. I don't care if it's a paragraph or bullet points or whatever, but just give me a framework of what I'm expecting from you. What is it what is your vision for this? Because you see something that I don't. What is it? Show me. So I wrote him this thing, and I said, this is exactly what I want to do. And then he just said, he gave me the blessing and said, go for it. And when and obviously like when people are, I had blind ignorance in the Fishman world because there were some people that were like, Jeff Beck is a bigger guitar player than Tosin Abasi, or something like that, like before we ever signed Tosin. And I'm like, yeah, but Tosin Abasi's like awesome. He's like, he's the darling. He's the next Steve Vai. And like, right. I would get into arguments with people around the building that don't understand the difference between, who was great, who is great, who's the future, who's the past, who's current, for now. Like, and I had such a great pulse on that. And I got a lot of resistance in certain aspects of that business, of certain employees that work there that kind of like were over me in that position. And there was a point where Larry Fishman was like, Ken, fucking go for it. I believe in you. Do whatever you got to do. And that was like, that's awesome because like I had blind ignorance. I have no business of being like per se, like being on the road and then grooming myself to be this like project brand manager, like guy and launching a product and help Larry Fishman, like get all of his hard work out of, like out of the building and into the masses. But all I said to him, I told Larry, I'm like, you're like, I want to be a part of history. This is why I'm here. Yeah. And I'll do anything it takes. I will lose sleep. I will knock on every door to make sure your vision gets out to the world. And I was able to assist him in that. And it's one of my biggest, if not biggest accomplishment in my history, like my career, other than music. I've accomplished a lot of stuff, but I would say that like Larry accepting me and trusting me. And then like, he has my loyalty. I would jump in front of a bus, for any one of my bosses at Fishman. They're the coolest people in the world.
It's definitely one of those that between the many facets of your career in the music industry, between being in a band to then kind of producing bands and so forth, and then Fishman kind of seemed like it's kind of like this, like me doing this. Like there was other things I was doing, just wasn't necessarily suited for me. Like when this kind of started working, it's like, oh, of course this is what works. Yeah. I think your time, the sacrifices you made, getting Unearth off the ground and touring it and the career you had doing that, I think really is what allowed you and set you up to have so much success with Fishman doing what you do, because people know you proved it. That your shit with gear also from the recording side of things. So it's kind of hard to argue your resume of sorts. And also everyone knows that, like, as you were saying earlier, you're an East Coaster. We just don't bullshit. There's no fucking point. Yeah. So if you're coming to someone and being like, hey, and I mean, I think for the most part, you're one of the few people, especially even back in the day, like, love Andy Williams and stuff like that. But man, I remember that motherfucker had like a different guitar he was endorsed by. It seemed like every other half year.
Yeah.
That you were always pretty loyal and stuck by a lot of the gear that you were like, this is the best. This is what I use. And my name being next to this, being endorsed by this company, fucking means something in a sea of people who just took whatever because it was either free or cost me little to nothing to have. That I feel like that has extended all these years and decades later to the credibility that you lent to Fishman.
Yeah. For me, Fishman was, so there's like, not to get into the total amp and gear topic, but I'd say I thought the best like invention of my lifetime for the guitar was the Floyd Rose. I thought it enhanced or made people more creative, right? Using a whammy bar, all that stuff. Like guitars were pretty much like Les Pauls and anything else before the whammy bar was invented. And then people doing awesome, cool Eddie Van Halen stuff, right? But then there's like digital rack gear and Kempers and profilers and this and that and blah, blah, blah. And like throughout the years and Evertune bridges and this and that. And like, there's some things that I endorse that I really do believe in, but I also know what I'm losing when I'm using some of those things. Right. I know that the technology is there, but I also know what I'm like also missing from having like something that like, some ways you gain, some way you lose. Right. But with Fluence, I thought it was the greatest invention I've ever seen ever, other than since the Floyd Rose. And I was like, this actually makes guitars and pickups better. It actually takes away the bullshit from the last 80 years of winding a copper wire around a bobbin and all that crap. And this actually makes it makes guitar pickups sound and perform much better, hum free, the whole thing, phase aligned, multi-voiced. It was like I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And to be totally honest with you, I told Larry Fishman that I worked for him for free. I didn't care about money. I wasn't like, at this point I'm in a band and I was like, Larry, like we would argue, me and my COO about like what he's even paying me. I'm like, I don't even need it. I don't care. I just want to help you with this. That's how devoted I was to Larry's invention, because it really did need it. And one thing I recognized when I got there is that like Fishman's an acoustic company, right? They are the world leader in like acoustic amplification and undersaddle pickups and all that stuff. I was like, well, I'm that thing. I saw myself as that thing needed to be injected into that company in order to get to the other side of what they're not used to over there. The metal guys, the hard rock guys, the jazz players that are like, I know that like the trickle down effect is like metal players, like, rock players look up to metal players because they're gearheads, and it's a trickle down effect, next thing you know, like from the metal guy, you're getting to the Strat guy because like, you heard that Fluence pickups are amazing. So I'm loyal to the things that I like, and I use what I know that is good. And I will say that Larry Fishman is a genius. The whole company, the ecosystem of the company, like everyone who works there is so rad. I actually do legitimately like going to the office and seeing everybody there and working with them. That's very rare. Even my wife and I were talking. She's like, we're having one of those pie in the sky. Like she goes, if I won the lottery, I'd quit my job, and I would quit my job before I even told you. And I was like, oh, that's crazy. I actually like looked up and I was like, I'd probably just work for free. I was literally like, I'd probably like pull Larry and Jason in the office and be like, hey, I just made $1 gajillion in the lottery. Like, I'm just going to come in like less days a week, but I'm going to come to work. My wife thought I was fucking crazy for doing so.
Well, I mean, I think that speaks to a bigger thing that I've talked about for quite a while, is just like the sense of purpose. Because I feel like the generation, I'll say our grandparents' generation, because I think you're only a couple years older than me, I think. But it's a thing where, they would retire and then just do nothing and then basically just fucking wilt away and die very quickly because they don't think they serve a purpose. And I don't think we as people are just kind of meant to do absolutely nothing. I think we kind of need to be challenged and have some sort of a purpose to keep going on. So I always say, even if like, that was the same thing, I think I would do something, even at least like one day a week or something, just to be like, all right, I have a thing to do and be useful or of some service to somebody.
Yeah, my dad's in his 70s, mid 70s, and he still works. Larry Fishman's in his 70s, he still works, and they're on top of their game. It's cool. I love hanging out with Larry because the guy's like, mid 70s, and he's sharp as a fucking tack. Knows exactly how social media works, knows exactly how engineering works, and like inventing things still. And the guy kicks it. He comes out late at night, comes to Rammstein concerts, and watches like fucking fire exploding and shit, and drinks whiskey and tells awesome jokes. And he's that's what I want to surround myself with. I don't want to surround myself with, like, as I said, being in a fucking 4350 van with 20 people playing in front of five people, bringing $2,000, $10,000 worth of gear of my own in a fucking trailer that can get stolen at any time to play in front of nobody or at doors at a fucking festival. Like, it's not my vibe. I want to do great things. And if you can't do great things, you need to pause and not do great things for a while in order for that great thing to be great again. Give people a reason to fucking come.
It's funny. You just reminded me of something. I was talking to Chris from Barry Tomorrow, and their new record coming out. It's called Will You Haunt Me With That Same Patience? And we were talking about the idea of patience being something that can be a haunting type thing, but also can be something that is a positive thing. But it's interesting because I think when you don't have patience, all you want is the immediacy of the thing. But when you're able to actually do that and kind of not need that,
yeah,
it's way more rewarding in the grand scheme of things when you get that thing because you've kind of earned it.
You know what I learned about band people is that athletes can't do this because you can't fucking hang around, because you're like, it becomes a physical thing. But with band things, it's like it becomes people's, like, the band becomes people's identities, and they would rather have the notoriety or to be remembered as that person. And like, remember I said, like, muscle memory, like when you were kids, like when we were kids would play, Unearth got that one good show, and then there's like aspiring to like go back to that point of playing that good show again. Well, like what happens with band members is that they get older, they get fatter, they get balder, they get weird looking, they put out bad records, like they don't put out like quality products or whatever it is, or their label pays for good reviews and shit, and it gives them hope. And then the next thing you know, like, they're just doing the same thing over and over and trying to figure out why they're not great anymore. And sometimes when you just stop doing what you're doing, and if you do have that fan base and people that want to see you, like, that's when you tap into that, when you like kind of pulled the ball from people. Like, look at Refuse, great example. I'm not saying they're old or fat or bald or anything like that, but they literally came back, and they don't come back often, and when they do, it's special. And I'm not knocking the guys with Unearth. I they have their own vision and stuff like that. But my vision for the band, which essentially, was one part of me leaving, was like, I wanted to preserve what the band was. I wanted the band to be remembered as this like juggernaut band that that was awesome and didn't cheapen itself. And, once you start doing the Jägermeister tours and, you float by and you start doing tours that you shouldn't be doing, like with bands that are not even your genre, it became really hard for me to have the desire to see the end of that game. You know what I'm saying? And I love those guys. I'm rooting for them. Trust me. Like, they'll play wherever there's electricity. But my argument is always like, and that was the joke they always used to make. But I was always like, that was great when you were 20, when people didn't know who you were. You could play 50 shows in one night, and everyone would be like, "Oh, it's awesome that you're here." But when you're already established band, you can't play 50 times, because then people just like, "God damn it, I'm fatigued." And that goes for all bands,
I think it's so funny you bring that up, because I was just thinking about this the other day. Because I think it's in my basement. I still have like the tour poster from when you guys toured with Chimera. And it was essentially the end of Chimera, because I think after that they called it a day. And I just remember the show here at the intersection, if I'm being completely honest, not being great. And I remember at the time, because that was when I started booking shows, kind of had a few more friends in the industry and kind of learned more about like tour budgets and stuff like that. And I was like, if this is how this tour is doing, like, I don't know how they're affording anything, like buses and all that shit. And I remember, you and I have talked about that tour specifically, where I was like, Chimera was the same thing, like diminished returns, and just instead of, I don't want to say egos, but just, well, we're in a bus, we made it to a bus, we're not going backwards. And it was a thing where it's like, when I thought about that, it's like, now Chimera went away. Now they're kind of coming back, and everyone wants them to be, and they're getting as good of opportunities like on DWP festivals and stuff than they probably ever would have got at the height of like the Impossibility of Reason or like the Infection and so forth. Or Resurrection. But it's a thing where, yeah, I feel the same way. It's like, man, could that happen on Earth if they just went away for like 5 years?
That's what I wanted. But what's really funny though is Matt DeVries, Chris Spacuzza, and Jim LaMarca. We have a like an ongoing meme / text DM situation on Instagram, and they're just starting to like tease stuff out. And I'll literally be like, "Oh, cool, fuck your power trip, bro." Like I just keep telling them like, I don't give a shit. Don't come back.
Stay gone.
No, but I'm rooting for them. Trust me. Like I just like to fuck with them. But they're, oh my god, they're the greatest people. Like those three guys specifically. I love them so much. Like I can laugh for hours with all three of those guys at any point. Like I'm glad they're doing what they're doing though.
Yeah, I think Matt's one of those people too that like just was always with everyone for a little while there. Between, what was it? Didn't he play with you guys for a hot second?
Yeah, I think at the time Slow was having issues with his newborn, and it was the time where we're like, "Hey, Slow, like, go home and handle this," right?
Yeah.
And DeVries was like obviously our homie, and we're like, "Dude, you want to like play bass for us?" I thought that was a cool move, and Matt was just kind of like, I don't know. I think maybe he got the Fear Factory gig instead. Unearth was like, that was during maybe right when we put out Shadows and Light, and maybe like during the March, that time period to 2012 or something. We were not doing amazing business, per se. And he had a blast with us. I mean, the times we had with him were amazing, but I think like at that time, I think Fear Factory was starting to come back and he got that gig or something. I would have loved to have him in the band just because Matt's the only guy that I can literally pick up the phone. Like I'll get a call from him or he'll call me, and we'll probably just literally yell at each other in gibberish for at least solid. And it's a long time, but 5 minutes. The beginning of the call is gibberish, saying profanity that doesn't make any sense. A lot of yelling and weird shit. And that's the extent of our relationship.
Speaking of things coming back, it seems like you collectively, I'll say, between following a bunch of you, USA is something's going on. Like it seems like you guys are getting nostalgic, showing behind the scenes stuff of like recording videos and putting out some of the songs from before. So what's going on with that?
Yeah, now that I have some time, I was actually up to like 3 or 4 a.m. last night. There's a song that Frank and I from USAUSA wrote years ago that it's called Someone Like You. It sounds exactly, if you were to take the audio from, like a National Lampoon's Vacation, where European Vacation, where Rusty wears the white jacket and comes down the stairs and he's dancing with all those like hot 80s chicks at the French nightclub.
Yeah.
Okay. The song is perfect for that. It sounds like how that, like what that, like literally it's what the soundtrack should be. And he and I are so into it because it's like such an 80s thing. And it's about, the lyrics are so amazing because like, it's like, there's always a girl in the back who's cried a little bit. And the one wearing black whose cigarette I lit, I'm like holding out for someone like you. Like, it's like one of those songs where it's like, everyone's been to the dance where like, there's always a girl crying because someone broke her heart. And there's always a wicked cool girl that like is waiting for you to like buy her drink, like, so this song is so fucking good that I'm like, Frank, like we have to do this. And then like, I got on a phone call with Dave Staubel, who's with Dropkick Murphys, like, as a tech right now, Ben Alexis, who is one of my oldest, longest best friends who does photography and he lives in Finland. But I'm like, we're doing a USA EP, like whether you guys like it or not. So they're all psyched. And we'll probably put something out there. I'm still always working on swivel material. And to be honest with you, I think I'm gonna put out like 2 or 3 songs. I think I'm gonna re-release the Burn Your Wishes stuff And I found some music that I was really into back in the day that I think I'm just going to release, like just put together and release. Like, I'm not worried about failing. I'm not worried about people if they think it's the greatest music in the world. But I have this like acoustic song that's very like Simon and Garfunkel kind of thing, that I think slams. And I got like 2 or 3 like rocker kind of songs like for Burn Your Wishes that I'm like into. So I think I'm just gonna like enjoy the time to just be creative and be myself for a little while and not worried about metal per se.
Yeah.
But ultimately the goal is I want to start a band. And like, as my wife's cooking her, I was like, you know what I want to do? I said to her like recently, I was like, I want to start a band like from Boston that's just guys with like hair on their shoulders and that like fucking that are fucking sketchy as fuck, that like play the heaviest. Like, I want to write this like heavy, hardcore, stompy. What did I say hardcore about? Like metalcore, like what I'm good at. Not so technical, but just super heavy fucking like music with like guys that are just like literally have to shave their their shoulders. You know what I mean? If they want to wear like, you know, like a tank top, like these knuckle dragging dudes. And I was just like, I want to be in a cool fucking band like that. And she's like, oh, it's great timing. You know, like you're going to have a kid and like, you're just going to be in one of the, you know, Boston's heaviest, most dangerous bands. I'm like, yeah, that's what I want right now.
Well, I think I always thought it was funny because, like, you know, it was really amusing to indirectly be shouted out on a Jost episode. It's the second time I've almost been named, but not been named. Because a buddy Frank Valley from The World We Knew, that he like now he's out on tour right now with Deftones. But it's funny because he was on Josh's thing and he was talking about something else, and then it was like about to mention me literally, and then he was like, yeah, I got a friend. And I was like, oh, fuck you, Frank. And you did the same thing because like Josh was like, yeah, you got to like just put out this shit, like quit saving it in the vaults. Like I put out your Burn Your Wishes. I don't think he didn't even say the band name right. It's like if some kid snagged it up and was like immediately, it was just like, oh my God, I've been looking for this. I love this album so much. And then you're like, yeah, I know that guy.
Yeah, it's like I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, but it was just really amusing because it's like even on that, like, yeah, you got some rockin' tunes, but like there's that one that's like kind of an acoustic-y thing, like track 2 or 3 on your side of the split. Yeah. But I mean, between that USA and even Swivel and stuff like that, I feel like you've kind of showcased that. Obviously more than just, you know, technical metal riffs and shit like that. Like, I mean, that's always what kind of drew me to a lot of what you were doing and some of the people involved. I mean, obviously I didn't really know Waltham before USA, but because of knowing the pedigree of that band and then going back through and getting to check it out, like, again, kind of going back to the cosign and sorts. It's like, that's the cool thing about like music existing and being able to go back and find something, even if you're late to the party.
Well, I'm always writing. I've ghost wrote on a lot of stuff, and I've done a lot of production on a lot of stuff like that no one's ever heard. But if I ever pointed to some records, I bet you'd like them a lot. Like, you know, there's a band called like Letter Day from Boston that like I produced their record and helped them shape their stuff, and like other bands. But like, it's so funny. Like, so the song that I was telling you about, the acoustic song that I wrote, that sounds like Simon and Garfunkel. Believe it or not, I was in a circle in the mid 2000s, the tweens years, whatever. There was this guy from Chicago, who was friends with this girl that I was friends with who paints guitars. That was a songwriter. Like he wasn't a songwriter. He was a businessman for songwriters, right? And at the time, the Plain White Tees had Hey There Delilah, that song like Hey There Delilah, you know, that whole freaking thing, right? And I remember like I was at a dinner and that guy was like, hey, yeah, I'm looking for like another song for them or something, right? Like that's a band that I work with and whatever. And I literally went home and I was inspired by something that I saw and I wrote the song. And I remember sitting back being like, holy shit, like this would be really fucking good for them. But I didn't talk to that guy anymore. You know, he was like fishing for other gigs for me. That never like came to be, but I'm still sitting on that song. And I was saying to myself, like, I would love to either give it to them still to this day, or I'll just put it out myself and just be like, yeah, you know, fuck it. Like maybe they'll Since You've Been Gone me like Butch Walker where like I'll release the song and then they'll use it later and it'll get big and then I'll be the guy who's just like, you know, known for just writing all the cool shit. So I have that kind of in my pocket, and I just have a bunch of other demos that like I feel real favorable about. Like I feel real good about them, and that's what I was doing last night. I was up till like 3 a.m. and neglecting my wife and dogs, and just up turning knobs and playing fucking guitars that, you know, in the middle of the night.
I'll kind of end with this, just an amusing anecdote. So I remember when that song, the Plain White Tee song, was like really popping, and I was probably another 70, 80 pounds lighter, especially in the face.
You could fit into a youth large, is what you're saying.
Oh yeah, 100%. And
Yeah.
And I could fit into a size 0 girls' pants.
There you go. That's the dream.
And it was a thing where I'm just sitting at this like shitty dye bar in Kalamazoo, and this girl like, and I dyed my hair black because we all did.
Yeah.
And this girl saunters up to me and she's like, "I really like your band." And I was like, "What?" And I was in a band, but I like clearly she would not have been into the band I was in at the time.
Yeah.
And I was like, what are you talking about? She's like, you know, Plain White Tees. And I was like, and I just looked at her and I was like, no. And she just kept going, no, it's you. And I go, no, it's really not. And she goes, no, it's cool. I know you're not, don't want to blow your cover. You don't want fans coming all over you. And I was like, okay, I have a big nose. That's the only thing that dude and I have a similarity in. I go, I have a handful of tattoos. Like I know he does not. But it was a thing where
and I'll sell you a song. It'll be amazing.
But it was so funny. And then I finally just go, okay, that song is like everywhere right now, right? And she was like, yeah. And I go, why the fuck would I be here in Kalamazoo, fucking Michigan, when I would probably be playing Chicago, Detroit, like anything other than here?
Exactly.
And then she goes, oh, yeah, I guess you're not him. And I was like, and I go, now you sound disappointed. Like I've been telling you the whole time I'm not him. And now you're bummed.
Yeah. Dude, I'll leave you with this. Buzz and I were outside of a venue one night, and oh man, I love like hanging with Buzz because a lot of shit like this always happens. But this kid rolls up to me and he literally like grabs my arms and like turns me and goes, dude, like you're such an inspiration. You're the greatest, like blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, Buzz is kind of like looking over the shoulder being like, huh, that's weird. You know, like that's cool. This is a little intense, right? And then I'm like, yeah, man, that's cool. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Whatever. And he's like, Ken, no, really, you are the greatest fucking drummer in Unearth that's ever played in Unearth. And I was like, and I looked at Buzz and I was like, no one seems to think that, but I also agree with you. I don't know. And I'm like, talk to Buzz, like tell him, dude, fucking A, dude.
That's great. You are the secret weapon of Unearth. You can do everything.
Dude, my drum programming is fucking insane.
So in conclusion, I've kind of been taking a few moments to do this because everyone I picked, I handpicked because they are people I really genuinely am friends with, people I enjoy having conversations with and have gotten to know over the years of doing this show. And you were someone that kind of gave me a little bit more confidence in what I was doing and gave me what I felt is some credibility where I didn't feel like maybe I had earned it or had gotten to a level to have that. And so I know I've said it to you over the years, but I've always been very appreciative of our friendship and the time that you've given me and just the friendship that has been built over the last, 5, 6, 7 years of getting to know one another. So I don't take that lightly. And I've always very much appreciated you over the years of even before we knew each other in any sort of real capacity. You never were a dick and blew me off or anything like that. You were always a super nice dude. And, I've always admired that about you. And I just want to say I thank you so much for your time today, tonight, in general, in the future, and all that kind of stuff. It's not lost on me, and I'm very appreciative of your time and friendship.
No, thanks, dude. Yeah, you've become a very close friend, and I always liked you for one solid reason as far as an interviewer goes, is that you always touch upon the things that like you make the conversation flow well. You ask like real questions that are the questions that I think most musicians want to like be asked. Whereas like I feel like every other interview that I've ever done, it's always like, what was it like to record at MD? What was it like to go on Ozfest? What was it like? Like you just get out of the out of the studio and everyone's asking like what's like to make a record and do this and blah, blah, blah. Like you're actually interested in the human aspect of a band and the way things work. And you actually touch upon like real life, which is, I think, always interesting. And you're not trying, your intent is also not, to catch somebody in saying the wrong thing. And that's what I appreciate about you. And I love the show, and I'm very honored to be back. Especially on what is this? What episode is this?
So I'm instead of doing straight up one episode that's 500, I'm doing a week of 500. It's my 500th episode week. So I'm doing Oprah's like favorite things, but it's my favorite guests that I handpicked.
That's awesome. Well, I'm honored to be on the list, and I'm sure the internet will light up with a lot of fucking shitty comments per usual, like Ken Van Flip now, which I love. But dude, listen, I'm always going to talk to you. I appreciate that you like to listen.
Yeah, I got to eventually coerce my wife to come out back to the East Coast. Every time we go, she's like, I don't get what's so special about it here. And I was like, you're just not from here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Boston is Boston's on a short list. We both definitely want to go back and experience more of that area and see what the vibe is as people who like going to gay bars and strip clubs, which I imagine Boston's got plenty.
It's so many. I think every bar is a gay bar here. It's awesome.
Every bar can be a gay bar if you make it one.
Yeah, technically, yes. Every bar is technically. But no, come out here. I'll cook you some pasta. You can probably meet the little one at that point. You'll see my demon spawn, my demon seed, and it'll be fun.
Something I feel bad saying this, knowing your wife can hear, but at the same time, she lives with you, so I can't be any worse than anything you've ever said.
Yeah,
I just always come back to the. So you wanted to keep cum as a pet, huh?
Yeah, exactly. No, dude, it's great. It's great. No, I'm psyched to be. I'm psyched to be doing what I'm doing. I'm psyched to be here. I'm lucky to have friends, and a lot of the stuff is a lot of stuff we talked about at the top of this podcast is pretty heavy stuff, and that wasn't the intent. And I'm definitely not like here to like slander anybody or whatever. But like, God damn it, sometimes people just gotta say what they fucking mean. And one of the things that As I Lay Dying, I think, loved about me at first is that like they're like, oh, I never have to worry about what Ken's thinking. He's just so he always articulates what he's gonna say. So guess what? I'm gonna fucking still articulate everything I'm gonna say. I'm not gonna shut my mouth. I'm not a pussy, and I'm not scared of anybody. I don't care. I don't give a shit. I'm here for a good time, not a long time, and I'm ready to party.
All right. Well, thank you so much for doing this, and I'm sure we'll chat soon, and I'll check out the song you just sent me.
Yeah. Tell me if it sucks or not.
So that was my conversation with Ken. I want to thank him once again for taking the time to go through all this and to feel comfortable enough to do it with me, especially for a milestone episode. This is kind of sort of the tip of the iceberg with some of the guests I have on and some of the places we go. I promise most of them aren't this salacious as far as, the world wanting to hear them. But I do think that there is something in each one that, there's something there for everyone to take away. And I hope the takeaway for this isn't that perpetuating the 24-hour news cycle of drama and stuff like that, but to really understand what it's like to be in the throes of an abusive relationship, to understand when you've hit that wall that you need to get out, however hard it may be. And also, I guess another thing that, has been a kind of prevalent thought for me the last handful of days is kind of having integrity and accountability for your own actions. But ultimately, I think another big thing that I'm really hoping that people can take away from this, aside from the band drama, Ken's at a really interesting point in his life where, he's given decades of himself to his career, to being a professional musician, and deciding now is the time to try something different and to start a new family with his wife, and to welcome their kid and see what that adventure looks like for him. And a couple of the people that are part of this 500 chat, they basically both are about to have kids. One just had their kid a couple of days ago as I'm recording this. You'll find out who that is probably about a month and a half, potentially, or maybe a little sooner, depending on if this person ends up posting anywhere about that. But it's a thing where, kind of like I said in the chat, it's sort of the circle of life. The death of, quote unquote, his career ushers in the new life of family. And I'm just really proud of who Ken is, and a lot of the adversities he's gone through over the last 4 or 5 years at this point of doing things for him, even though it may be the hard thing to do. But if it's the right thing and it's where you're supposed to be, then, you'll ultimately be rewarded for those sacrifices. And I can't think of a bigger sacrifice than, kind of giving up a career and putting it on the back burner for a little bit to kind of start this new life. So I want to thank him once again for this. Hopefully there is something in this that you are able to take away and try to become a better person in some way, shape, or form. That is obviously a huge proponent of what I want to do on this show. And like I said, the initial goal was not to put this out now, but in light of current events that are going on literally today, and then talking with Ken, it just feels like this is the time to do it. This is the time to kind of put this out and maybe kind of offer just a different narrative maybe than the one that's being pushed out there at this point. Kind of start wrapping up this episode. If you would like to keep up with, Ken, I guess, just Instagram, Ken Susi. There's not really any bands to promote. There's not anything to promote. And Ken doesn't have any other socials really other than his Instagram. If you'd like to keep up with the podcast, simple enough, Bruce Speak Pod on all your social media platforms, whichever one you use, should be able to be found. I want to thank Rockabilia. It feels kind of disingenuous to plug them, but they, very much like Ken, over the years have always been there to support me, to offer advice, a shoulder to kind of come to when I have questions about things. And Frankie and the Rockabilia crew over there are just amazing people. And you can use our code BRUTALLY at checkout and take 10% off your total purchase order. And just want to thank them for their continued support of this show as well. That's pretty much it. Like I said, I was not planning on putting out this episode for at least another month and a half. But what I really didn't want to do was to make it seem like I was trying to, like that we had done this after this information had kind of gone viral. So this is kind of, like I said, sneak peek of 500, and maybe I'll get another guest to kind of fill out the week still, but as of now, you're getting a taste of the 500th episode week. It's been a great journey to 500. Lots of ups and downs, and lots of interesting stories have come from this show, and this is going to be obviously another big one. So if this is the first time you're hearing the show, go back, check out any of the other episodes. If this is the first time you're hearing any of my chats with Ken, we've done, I think, 3 or 4 at this point. So go back and check those out. We cover a lot of different things throughout his career over the last 5, 6, 7 years, and he's the homie. So wish nothing but the best for him and his lady. And I would say I'll see you next week with another episode, but I'm literally recording what will come out this Sunday, and I might even just kind of chill and let this one kind of do whatever it's going to do. So enjoy the rest of your week, and I will talk to you all next time.